Reality doesn't operate the way you think it does. That's not an exaggeration. It's a provable fact hiding in plain sight. You've been taught a model of existence built on limitation. You've been told that progress happens through grind, that luck is the hidden variable, and that the world responds to your actions. But all of that, every bit of it, is built on a false premise. Because here's the real secret. You are not in reality. You are projecting it. This isn't poetic. This isn't motivational fluff. This is quantum physics speaking directly to the way your life works. Right now, in this very moment, you are broadcasting a frequency. That frequency isn't just some vibe, some mood. It is a precise electromagnetic signal that locks you into a version of space, time, identity, and experience. You're not waiting for results. You're not waiting for life to catch up. You are constantly selecting them. The truth is, reality isn't fixed. It's fluid, and you're holding the remote. This program, Quantum Recode, is not another self-help seminar. It's not a feel-good concept about thinking positive. This is about learning to engage the actual field, the quantum substrate from which all events, objects, identities, and timelines emerge, and shifting it with conscious intent. Across this experience, you'll uncover the real mechanics behind what you've been calling life. You'll confront the illusions that have quietly shaped your beliefs, your behaviors, and your results. And you'll start to notice something strange. Things begin to change rapidly, then consistently, and eventually predictably. That's not because of willpower. That's not because of strategy. It's because the moment your frequency stabilizes, the field has no choice but to reflect it. There's no lag time in the quantum field. There's only alignment. In this series, we will unpack the deepest truths about the nature of time, identity, manifestation, emotion, and reality architecture. Not as theories, but as levers you can actually pull. Here's what you'll discover. You'll see that time isn't a line. It's a loop, and you're choosing which part of the loop to land on. You'll understand why reality doesn't form until you observe it, and why your attention isn't just passive. It's creative. You'll realize that your thoughts, your emotions, your memories, all of them are instructions to the field. And the field? It listens in real time. This isn't a spiritual metaphor. It's the operating system behind reality. And when you understand how it works, you stop hoping for change and start choosing it. No more waiting. No more efforting. No more wondering if you're doing it right. Because the moment your signal locks in, reality doesn't need time to respond. It responds now. So if you're ready to stop reacting to life and start authoring it, keep going. Because nothing about your current situation is permanent unless your frequency says it is. And today that changes. You've been moving through time as if it were a conveyor belt. Past behind you, future ahead. But that's not how the quantum field describes it. According to leading-edge physics, time is not a river. It's not even linear. It's a construct of perception, a way your brain organizes sensory data in a format that feels coherent. But coherence isn't reality. It's just convenient. In the field, all time exists simultaneously. That means your past, your present, and every possible future are all already here. Not metaphorically, but literally. You are not traveling through time. You are selecting slices of it, much like tuning a radio to different stations. Each moment, your consciousness locks onto a frequency that determines which now you experience. But here's where it gets real. Your default setting has been based on unconscious calibration. That means you've been picking timelines not based on desire or preference, but based on pattern, habit, emotional residue, and belief. This is not free will. This is auto-selection. Let's get specific. Think of every memory you have as a frequency stamp, a stored vibrational signature that lives in your field. When you recall that memory, you aren't just thinking about the past. You are partially reactivating the timeline that frequency belongs to. That means the trauma you haven't cleared, the narrative you keep rehearsing, the identity you keep reaffirming. All of it is tuning you to a version of now that matches those data points. And the future is not being built in front of you. It's already constructed. You're just skipping between options based on how coherent your signal is. Let's break this down further. The quantum field operates like an infinite archive of realities. Every possible version of you, rich, poor, healed, sick, empowered, defeated, already exists as a frequency pattern. What determines which one shows up as real is not effort. It's resonance. Resonance doesn't care what you want. It only cares what you're a match to. So when you keep replaying the idea that I always struggle with money, you aren't just affirming a belief. You're locking into a frequency loop that matches a version of you who continues to struggle. If time is a field of options and not a single path, then the solution isn't to work harder. It's to select better. And selection is done through signal. When you start broadcasting the signal of a version of you that's already abundant, already at peace, already in the next level of being, the field has no option but to match it. This is why identity is central to real-time transformation. Not because identity is psychological, but because identity is electromagnetic. It's a vibrational structure that tells the field what it's supposed to stabilize. So when you say, I am this, you are making a command. That command reshuffles the version of now you plug into. This is how time loops. You think you're progressing, but if you don't shift your signal, you keep landing on slightly updated versions of the same timeline. Feels like growth. It's actually recursion. Your life isn't repeating because the world is unfair. It's repeating because you're locked into a feedback loop. And feedback loops don't break with willpower. They break with frequency interference. That interference starts with awareness. Once you see that you are not traveling through time, but surfing across options, you begin to realize that your signal is your vehicle. And you can pilot it. You can stop trying to predict the future and start tuning to the one that's already constructed in your favor. Quantum shifting doesn't require massive effort. It requires precision. The more clearly you identify and lock into the desired frequency, the faster your external reality organizes around it. Here's the paradox. The future is not a destination. It's a playlist. And you're the selector. If you've been looping the same outcomes, the same frustrations, the same almost successes, you're not cursed. You're consistent. Consistently locked into a timeline through emotional resonance. The good news? That means you're also one frequency shift away from a totally different now. So stop trying to fix the past. Stop fearing the future. Start tuning. Because time is not moving. You are. Everything you're experiencing right now, this moment, this room, this body, this life, feels like something external to you. It appears solid. It appears objective. It appears to be happening to you. But none of that is true. What you call reality is not a fixed, independent structure. It is a projection. And the projector is not the world. It's you. Let's be exact. When you open your eyes and look around, photons are bouncing off surfaces and entering your retinas. That's where physicality ends. From that point on, the brain takes those photon signals, those pulses of light, and translates them into images. You're not seeing the world. You're seeing your mind's interpretation of light. And it gets stranger. The photons that reflect off objects don't carry color. They don't carry shape. They don't carry meaning. Those are added by your internal perceptual system. That means everything you see is not what is, it's what your brain thinks should be. Your consciousness is creating the format. Now extend that out. If perception is a construct, then what determines how the construct is built? The answer is signal. Your thoughts, your emotions, your memories, your beliefs. These are all part of a vibrational architecture. That architecture determines which aspects of the infinite field are visible to you. In quantum terms, this is a collapse of potential. Reality doesn't solidify until observed. But observation is not passive. It's an act of creation. You are not witnessing what's real. You are selecting from what's possible. This is more than perspective. This is blueprint-level projection. Just like a film projector casts an image onto a blank screen, your frequency casts your internal pattern onto the fabric of spacetime. You are walking through a world shaped by your own electromagnetic field, not because you're imagining it, but because the field conforms to resonance. Resonance is law. So when something shows up in your life, a circumstance, a person, a problem, a breakthrough, it's not appearing randomly. It's matching the signal you've been carrying. Here's where it becomes practical. If your external reality feels stuck, chaotic or incomplete, the first instinct is to try to fix it from the outside. But the outside is a mirror. It doesn't respond to correction. It responds to calibration. That means you don't need to rearrange your life. You need to retune your signal. Let's say you've been struggling in relationships. Maybe you feel unseen, unheard, unappreciated. That experience isn't proof of your worthlessness. It's proof of your current broadcast. When your identity carries the blueprint of not chosen, the field reflects it perfectly. It will keep sending back experiences that affirm that template. Not to punish you, but because that's the signal you're sending. Same with money. Same with health. Same with purpose. The outer world is not the generator. It's the echo. You cannot change the echo by yelling at the canyon. You change it by altering the sound you project. This is why conscious signal management is everything. If you don't learn to command your field, it will continue broadcasting by default, shaped by past pain, inherited beliefs, and outdated self-images. And you will keep seeing reality that isn't real at all. It's just familiar. Familiar doesn't mean true. It means repeated. This is why breakthroughs feel so shocking. They aren't exceptions. They're just moments when your signal temporarily escaped its loop. But if you don't stabilize that shift, the old projection returns. So how do you stabilize it? First, you need to become radically honest about what your life is reflecting. Don't moralize it. Don't judge it. Just read it. Everything you're experiencing is a signal readout. If your days feel rushed and scattered, your signal is diffused. If opportunities keep slipping through your fingers, your signal is broadcasting scarcity or unworthiness. If synchronicities and openings are happening constantly, your signal is matching a timeline of alignment. The key is to stop blaming the world and start reading it like a dashboard. Next, you start feeding the field with conscious patterns. This doesn't mean forcing positive thoughts. That's ineffective. The field doesn't listen to lip service. It listens to alignment. Alignment means coherence between what you think, what you feel, and who you believe you are. When those three match, your signal becomes clean. And clean signals reshape reality faster than action ever could. Now let's correct a common myth. You are not attracting what you want. You are projecting what you are. You don't get what you desire. You get what your identity emits. So the work is not about craving more. It's about becoming the version of you that naturally broadcasts a new reality. And here's the radical truth. Once you start projecting a different signal, the universe doesn't resist. It doesn't challenge you. It doesn't test you. It simply reflects. The field is a perfect mirror. It has no bias. It's not trying to teach you a lesson. It's not here to make you earn your upgrades. It simply arranges itself around your dominant frequency. So when people say, see it to believe it, they're operating backwards. In the quantum field, it's believe it and then you see it, not as optimism but as mechanics. You are not stuck. You are projecting stuck. You are not limited. You are projecting limitation. You are not waiting for change. You are broadcasting the frequency of delay. And the second you shift that signal internally, not through words but through vibration, reality must change to match it. It doesn't need time. It doesn't need permission. It doesn't need planning. It just needs a new blueprint. And that blueprint is being written every moment by you. You've been taught to think of consciousness as a byproduct of biology, that somehow, somewhere inside the folds of your brain, awareness emerges. It's been framed as the result of complex neural interactions, as if the brain's electrical signals are producing thought the way a light bulb produces light. But here's the problem with that explanation. No one can find it. Despite decades of neuroscience, there is still zero empirical evidence that consciousness arises from the brain. You can scan it. You can map it. You can even stimulate parts of it to evoke memories, emotions, or sensations. But no matter how deep you go into gray matter, you never arrive at a source. That's because you're looking in the wrong place. Consciousness isn't something the brain generates. Consciousness is the field the brain interfaces with. The brain is not the origin of awareness. It's a receiver, a transducer, a biological filter that tunes your experience of an infinite field of consciousness into something usable in 3D space. Your thoughts aren't coming from your brain. They're being processed through your brain. This matters more than you realize. Because if consciousness is not housed in your skull, then who you are is not confined to your physical form. You are not the body. You are the signal running through the body. And that signal, your awareness, is the core directive behind everything you experience. It doesn't just witness reality. It formats it. In digital terms, the field of consciousness is the operating system behind the simulation you call life. The brain is just the terminal. It allows interaction, but it doesn't contain the program. Let's go deeper. In quantum mechanics, observation affects outcome. Particles don't assume fixed states until measured. That means consciousness, not matter, is the primary organizing force. You've been living under the illusion that you are a conscious brain navigating a material universe. But the actual framework is inverted. You are a non-local field of consciousness experiencing a localized reality through a neurological interface. This opens the door to a radical truth. Consciousness is not just your awareness of the world. It's the very code that gives the world its form. And if it gives form, it can reformat. You can change your external life not by changing circumstances, but by changing the state of the consciousness that observes them. Let's bring this out of theory and into practice. Most people try to change their lives by acting on the level of results. They switch jobs. They end relationships. They rearrange habits. But because their fundamental state of consciousness doesn't shift, the field continues to recycle the same themes in new disguises. Different job, same frustration. Different partner, same dynamic. Different city, same emptiness. That's not failure. That's feedback. Until your source code changes, the simulation cannot. Your source code is the vibrational layer beneath thought, the frequency from which thoughts arise. This is not the same as mindset. This is the lens through which reality even appears to exist. It is not about positive thinking. It is about becoming a conscious operator of your own field. When you sit in awareness, not thoughts, not labels, not memories, pure awareness, something profound happens. The illusion of separation collapses. You stop identifying with the character in the simulation and begin to recognize yourself as the signal that animates it. You see the body as a vehicle, the mind as a tool, the environment as a projection, and you as the code. This is the beginning of what quantum recoding actually means. You are not reprogramming a personality. You are consciously altering the signal that renders space, time, identity, and outcomes. Not by force, but by state. Let's talk about access. The key to shifting your life instantly is not hustle. It's signal stabilization. You don't need to think your way into a new timeline. You need to embody the frequency of the timeline where that version of you is already active. An embodiment doesn't happen through words. It happens through signal immersion. That means getting quiet, not to relax, but to bypass the interference of thought and access the layer beneath, the field of consciousness itself. Because only from that place can you issue true commands. From the thinking mind, you beg. From the conscious field, you instruct. This is the difference between effort and authority. You are not asking reality to change. You are selecting a version that already exists and syncing your awareness to it. This is possible because the field is holographic. Every possible outcome already exists. You're not building a future. You're accessing a frequency band. Your consciousness is the tuner. The brain is the interface. The body is the expression. And the external world is the mirror. But the power begins with awareness. Once you stop identifying with the contents of your mind and start identifying as the awareness observing the mind, you unlock control over the operating system. From that point, you no longer react to thoughts. You select them. You no longer chase outcomes. You align to them. You no longer wait for life to shift. You shift reality itself. So the question is no longer, how do I fix this? The real question is, who is the I that's trying to fix it? Because if you're trying to change your life from the level of thought, you're still operating as the avatar. But the moment you return to pure awareness, unbound, neutral, infinite, you remember who you are. Not a thinker, not a doer, not a character. You are the code. You are the observer. You are the source. And from that space, reality has no choice but to obey. You don't have to learn how to manifest. You already do it. Constantly. Every relationship in your life, every financial situation, every emotional pattern, every daily experience. These are all manifestations. Not the results of random chance, not the outcome of isolated effort, but the precise echo of a signal you've been broadcasting without realizing it. Here's the catch. You haven't been doing it consciously. Manifestation is not a secret technique. It's the mechanical response of the quantum field to your vibrational output. This response never turns off. The field doesn't pause, delay, or choose when to respond. It mirrors you 24/7, even in sleep, even in confusion, even in fear. And because your awareness has been running on old programming, the field has been reflecting an old version of you. Let's clear up one of the most common misunderstandings right now. You don't manifest with your thoughts alone. You manifest with your frequency, and that frequency is a composite of your dominant beliefs, emotions, expectations, and self-concepts. That means the most beautiful visualization in the world won't materialize if your field is emitting something contradictory. If you're visualizing abundance but carrying the frequency of lack, the field responds to lack. If you're affirming confidence but embodying insecurity, the field reflects insecurity. If you're scripting love while radiating mistrust, mistrust is what loops back. Not because the universe is ignoring you, but because it's reading your real signal, not your surface activity. So what is your signal made of? It's not just thoughts. It's the felt sense behind the thoughts. It's the identity you've accepted as normal. It's the mood that runs in the background when you're not trying to be positive. This is the root of unconscious manifestation. You've been broadcasting based on repetition, repeating feelings, beliefs, narratives, inner dialogues, until those repetitions became resonance. And resonance is the only language the field understands. That's why things that feel familiar keep returning. Not because you're cursed, not because you're unlucky, but because you've unconsciously trained the field to stabilize a version of you who matches those outcomes. To change what shows up, you don't need to work harder. You need to interrupt the loop. An interruption doesn't happen through willpower. It happens through awareness. When you begin to notice what you're feeling without justification, without analysis, without trying to fix it, you start to reclaim authorship of your signal. Awareness is the first intervention. Because the moment you become aware that your current emotion is broadcasting a timeline, you're no longer at the mercy of it. Let's break this down into something usable. Say you're experiencing anxiety about money. Your mind wants to spiral, imagining bills, failures, outcomes that haven't even occurred. But none of that mental activity is neutral. Every thought is a frequency anchor. Every fear is a tuning fork. If you engage with the fear as real, the field confirms it. But if you pause, observe the fear, and ask, is this what I want the field to stabilize right now? Something changes. You've stepped into conscious creation. Now you're not reacting. You're choosing. And in that choice, you can shift. Here's the process. Interrupt the loop with presence, not denial. Acknowledge the pattern, see it as data, not identity. Choose a new frequency, not just a new thought, but a new felt experience. Hold it long enough for the field to recognize it as the new dominant signal. This doesn't take years. It doesn't even take months. Frequency stabilization can happen in minutes, not because time has passed, but because resonance locked in. The moment you stop sending out the old pattern, the field no longer has instructions to sustain it. This is why your life can change rapidly, not through effort, but through energetic congruence. Let's be clear. The field isn't moral. It's not punishing you. It's not testing you. It's not making you prove your worth. It simply reflects. So if you've been manifesting struggle, failure, or inconsistency, it's not because you're wrong. It's because your signal has been unstable or oriented to a frequency that matches those outcomes. Unconscious manifestation is simply conscious creation on autopilot. And autopilot runs based on your default identity. So the question becomes, who have you been being without realizing it? What emotional tones shape your average day? What self-talk repeats inside your mind? What expectations have become so normal, you stop noticing them? All of that's your field programming. You don't need to judge it. You need to update it. And updating it doesn't mean pretending. It doesn't mean forcing gratitude when you feel numb. It doesn't mean slapping positivity on top of fear. It means shifting into the emotional signature of the version of you who is already experiencing what you want. Not hoping for it. Not wishing. Not rehearsing. Living it energetically now. Because that version of you exists. Already. In the field. And when your signal matches that version, the physical world rearranges. It's not magic. It's physics. You've been manifesting all along. The only difference between struggle and mastery is awareness. So stop wondering if it works. Start noticing what's working right now, not in your favor or against it, but with perfect fidelity to your signal. You're already powerful. The next step is to use that power on purpose. There's a strange phenomenon in quantum physics known as the observer effect. You've probably heard about it, maybe as a weird footnote in science or a vague metaphor in spiritual circles. But this concept is not abstract. It's not theoretical. It's the basis for how your entire life unfolds. Let's clarify the principle. In quantum experiments, particles like electrons or photons do not behave like solid objects. They exist as a wave, a cloud of probabilities until they are observed. The moment they are measured, they collapse into a single point, a fixed state. What this means is shocking. The act of observation determines what becomes real. Not action, not intention, not planning. Observation. Now take this out of the lab and into your life. You are not passively witnessing reality. You are selecting outcomes by the way you place your awareness. Wherever your attention goes, reality locks in. Let that land. Your life is not happening independently of your gaze. Your gaze is formatting life. This is not metaphorical. This is mechanical. When you fixate on a problem, even with the intent to solve it, you're stabilizing that version of reality. Your focus is collapsing that probability into your experience. Not because the problem is more real than the solution, but because it has your attention. The universe doesn't play favorites. It doesn't prioritize good over bad, hope over fear. It simply reflects the quality of your gaze. And your gaze is more than sight. It's the field of your conscious awareness, where you direct your inner attention, mentally, emotionally, energetically, becomes the template from which your external world takes shape. This turns attention into your most powerful tool. Not effort, not time, not even belief. Tension. Because attention is what collapses the field. This explains why so many people struggle to create change. Not because they lack vision, but because they're unconsciously reinforcing the opposite outcome with their attention. They say they want abundance, but keep observing lack. They say they want love, but keep observing absence. They say they want purpose, but keep observing confusion. The field reads attention as instruction. If you keep focusing on what isn't working, you're locking that version of reality in place. The observer effect isn't a passive concept. It's your scriptwriter. And you're writing it every moment you look at something. Let's explore this deeper. Most people are trained to be reactive. They scan their environment and respond to what they see. But what they see is already the product of a prior signal. So they're observing the echo, not the source, and then reinforcing it with their focus. That's how loops form. You experience something, you give it attention, and that attention generates more of the same. This isn't destiny. This physics on repeat. To break the loop, you must interrupt the gaze. That means pulling your attention away from what is and placing it on what could be, not as fantasy but as directive. You are not ignoring reality. You are reassigning your observation to a different potential. And once the observation is stable, the field conforms. This is not about denying facts. It's about recognizing that facts are fluid. What you call a fact is just a previously observed frequency that became stable. But stability isn't truth. It's repetition. Anything observed long enough appears permanent. But permanence is an illusion. Even the most fixed part of your life, your job, your relationship, your identity, is just a feedback loop of observation. You've been looking at it so long, it hardened. But change doesn't require destruction. It requires redirection. Shift your gaze and you shift the script. Now let's talk about attention quality. There's a difference between focused attention and fractured attention. When you place deep, coherent, emotionally charged attention on a reality, the field responds quickly. When your attention is scattered, hesitant, or doubting, the field reflects ambiguity. This is why clarity matters. Clarity isn't just mental, it's energetic. It's the fusion of focus and certainty. Once you observe a timeline with emotional precision, meaning you feel it, believe it, expect it, the field has no choice but to comply. Because you're not just thinking about it, you're living in the signal of it. That's when the observer becomes the author. You're no longer reacting to what appears. You're dictating what appears. But this requires discipline, because the world is constantly competing for your attention. Notifications, opinions, problems, distractions. All of them pulling your gaze away from your chosen script. If you let your attention be hijacked, your reality will follow suit. This is why energy mastery is really attention mastery. You don't have to fix your whole life. You just have to control where your awareness goes. If something unwanted appears, observe it briefly, recognize it, and then pull your focus back to the timeline you prefer. You don't fight the old. You stabilize the new. Over time, the old loses signal. The field stops feeding it. It fades not because you overpowered it, but because you outfocused it. This is how reality shifts. Not by force, not by waiting, but by gaze. So from now on, understand this: you are not looking at life. You are formatting it, every second, and your power lives in the next thing you choose to observe. There's a voice in your head that never stops talking. It narrates your day, comments on your choices, critiques your actions, worries about the future, replays the past, and labels everything in sight. Most people live under the impression that this voice is who they are. But it isn't. That voice is not you. It's a program. Your brain is not your identity. It's the interface you're using to translate consciousness into experience. It's like a touch screen. You can use it. You can even feel sensations through it. But it's not the source of what's happening. It's just the filter. This distinction changes everything. If you think your thoughts are you, then you're stuck inside the output of an old operating system. You're reacting to software, not reality. Thoughts are not commands. They're impulses generated by a combination of memory, emotion, environmental triggers, and energetic frequency. They are feedback, not identity. You don't have to believe them. You don't have to obey them. You don't even have to fight them. You just have to recognize what they are: patterns of interpretation being offered by the brain in response to your field. The key phrase here is your field. Your brain doesn't think in a vacuum. It pulls from the electromagnetic frequency you're currently emitting. Let's unpack this. Your signal, your dominant emotional, energetic state, determines what data your brain processes and serves back to you as thought. In low-frequency states, fear, shame, anger, guilt, your brain will pull matching thoughts. It will scan your history for failure. It will spotlight problems. It will magnify threats. Not because the world is dangerous, but because your current signal instructed it to retrieve that version of reality. In high-frequency states, gratitude, clarity, joy, power, the brain opens different drawers. It accesses solutions. It recalls breakthroughs. It amplifies alignment. The brain is not filtering reality neutrally. It's matching your vibration. And here's the paradox. Most people try to fix their thinking while still living in the frequency that created it. They try to insert positive affirmations on top of a signal of unworthiness. They try to rewrite stories while still anchored to emotional loops from the past. But that doesn't work, because thoughts are effects, not causes. Trying to change your reality by changing your thoughts is like trying to fix a glitch on a monitor by touching the screen. You're interacting with the display, not the source. The real shift happens when you recalibrate your signal. When you do that, the brain naturally outputs new thoughts. Not because you forced it, but because the interface is now reading a different energetic input. Let's make this concrete. You wake up feeling anxious. The brain immediately starts serving thoughts. What if this goes wrong? I'm falling behind. No one understands me. Those thoughts feel real. but they're just matching the signal of anxiety already in your field. Now you try to replace them. Everything's going to be fine. I'm safe. I trust the process. But if the underlying signal hasn't changed, those words feel hollow. Why? Because your brain is detecting a mismatch. It knows the emotional field doesn't match the content of the affirmation, so it rejects it as false. Real change doesn't come from argument. It comes from alignment. If you want better thoughts, don't wrestle them. Raise the frequency they emerge from. This is why techniques like breathwork, movement, visualization, and meditation are so powerful. Not because they change your mind directly, but because they alter the field your brain is reading. When the field changes, the thoughts shift automatically. Let's also address identity. Your thoughts tell you stories about who you are, but they're not the author. They're the echo. If your signal carries the frequency of, "I'm not enough," the brain will retrieve a matching file and play it on repeat. It's not trying to sabotage you. It's trying to maintain coherence with the field. This is why self-concept is crucial. Not in the way it's often taught as a list of beliefs to memorize, but as a vibrational state to maintain. You are not the sum of your memories. You are not the echo of your thoughts. You are not the product of your past. You are the signal beneath the system, and you can upgrade that signal now. The moment you stop identifying with your thoughts, you begin to regain access to the field. From that place, you stop reacting. You start selecting. Not, "Why do I keep thinking this?" but, "Is this thought matching who I choose to be?" If the answer is no, drop it. Not with resistance, but with neutrality. You're not battling the brain. You're updating the frequency it's receiving. Here's a powerful truth. You don't need to fix your thoughts. You need to change what feeds them. That means regulating your emotions. That means managing your attention. That means designing your identity signal consciously. The brain will follow, because it's not in charge. It's just a translator. And the language it's translating is the energy you live in. When you stabilize a new state, not by trying to control thought, but by cultivating the signal of the version of you who already thinks differently, the script rewrites itself. No force, no friction, no fight, just signal. So from this moment forward, stop giving your thoughts the final say. Stop treating your mind as your master. Your brain is just the interface. You are not your thoughts. You are the frequency they arise from, and that frequency is yours to command. You've been taught to treat emotions as reactions, personal responses to events, people, or situations. Happiness when things go well, frustration when they don't, fear when things feel uncertain. But that's not how the field sees it. In the quantum framework, emotion is not a side effect of experience. It's the instruction that shapes it. Every emotion you feel, no matter how subtle, is a signal. That signal doesn't stay inside you. It radiates outward into the field and imprints the very fabric of your timeline. Emotion is not private. It's electromagnetic. It carries a frequency signature, and that frequency becomes your energetic broadcast. You are always broadcasting, not through words, not through intentions, but through emotional state. And the field? It's listening. Not sometimes. Not only when you meditate or set goals. Always. Right now, in this exact moment, you are sending a message into the unified field. That message is not in English or Spanish or any spoken language. It's in emotion. And the field responds with perfect symmetry. Let's break this down. Think of emotion as a tuning fork. When you strike it, whether it's the high note of joy or the dense hum of resentment, the field begins to reorganize itself to match. If you sustain the vibration long enough, reality catches up. So when people say, trust your feelings, they're only scratching the surface. It's not just about guidance. It's about power. Because your feelings don't just show you where you are, they move you through the field to a version of reality that matches. Let's get specific. If you walk around in a state of chronic disappointment, your field begins selecting timelines where disappointment is built in. Not because the universe is punishing you, but because it's mirroring the dominant emotional message you're emitting. If you live in a constant state of anticipation and gratitude, the field starts lining up timelines where there's more to be grateful for. It's not reward. It's resonance. Emotion is the shortcut to real change because it bypasses logic and gets right to the energetic root. You don't need to understand how things will shift. You don't need to plan the mechanism. You need to broadcast the emotion that corresponds to the result you want as if it's already here. Not to fake it, not to manipulate the universe, but because this is how the field reads your order. Let's be clear, the field doesn't respond to what you want. It responds to what you are. And what you are is defined emotionally. You can speak all the right affirmations, but if your dominant emotional field says, "I'm still scared," the field organizes itself around fear. Emotion overrides intention every time. This is why people can meditate, visualize, and plan for years without results. If their emotional field is broadcasting confusion, resentment, or defeat, that's what keeps forming. Now, this doesn't mean you're supposed to feel good all the time. This isn't emotional suppression. It's emotional precision. You must learn to read emotion as data. When you feel discomfort, don't bury it. Listen, not to indulge it, but to recognize the signal you're broadcasting. If you're angry, don't analyze the cause. Ask, is this what I want the universe to reflect back to me right now? If you're hopeless, don't spiral in it. Pause and ask, what version of reality is this frequency building for me? This level of emotional awareness is not psychological. It's architectural, because emotion builds timelines. So how do you start using emotion consciously instead of unconsciously? You begin by mastering two things: emotional awareness and emotional command. Emotional awareness means noticing the signal you're sending before it gets broadcast. This happens in real time. You walk into a conversation and feel a tightness in your chest. Pause. That tightness is a signal. If you don't shift it, the field will respond accordingly. Emotional command means learning to shift into the emotional state that matches the version of you actually choose to be. If you want to be a match to peace, you must feel peace now. If you want to live in abundance, you must feel abundance now, not after it arrives. Before. Because your emotion is the arrival. Once it's stable in the field, the material confirmation has to follow. And it will. Every time. But here's the part most people miss. Emotional frequency must be authentic. You can't fake joy while still radiating scarcity underneath. The field will always detect your actual signal, not your performance. That's why the work isn't about pretending. It's about recalibrating until the emotion becomes genuine. You get there by anchoring into memory, movement, visualization, breath, anything that shifts the body into coherence with the desired emotion. Once that coherence hits, the signal stabilizes, and the field reorganizes. That's the formula. Emotion, frequency, reality. It's not linear. It's not slow. It's not conditional. It's instant once the signal is locked. This is why you've seen people change their lives overnight after an emotional breakthrough. Not because they found a hack, but because their signal finally matched the timeline they wanted. Emotion was the switch. So stop treating feelings like side effects. Stop labeling them as good or bad. Start treating them as commands. Because that's exactly what they are. Every moment you feel something, you are issuing a frequency code to the universe. You're telling it what kind of world you expect to live in. And the universe, the field, doesn't argue. It reflects. With perfect clarity. With total precision. With no delay once the frequency is stable. Your emotion is the interface. Your emotion is the key. Your emotion is the broadcast. And reality is just the screen that plays the signal back. There is no off switch, no pause button, no timeout. The quantum field, the intelligent matrix that mirrors your consciousness into form, doesn't sleep, stall, or take breaks. It responds continuously to your energetic state. Not occasionally. Not when you meditate. Not when you feel clear. Always. This means every thought you entertain, every emotion you hold, every story you rehearse, whether casually or obsessively, is an input, command, a frequency feed into the system that generates your experience. You're feeding the field 24/7, and the field never rejects the signal. It doesn't check whether it's good for you. It doesn't cross-reference your long-term goals. It doesn't pause and say, This isn't in your best interest. It reflects whatever you give it, with total fidelity and zero resistance. So the real question is not, is the field working? It's, what am I feeding it right now? Let's look at how this plays out. If you wake up stressed and immediately reach for your phone, your nervous system begins its day in reactive mode. That stress becomes your baseline broadcast. The field receives that signal and stabilizes a reality where more stress is present. Not because you want it, but because that's what you're feeding it. Now imagine doing this every morning for months. You begin to say, this is just how life is. But it isn't. It's how your field has been programmed, incrementally, automatically, and unconsciously. Most people don't realize they're programming their field all day long. Every complaint is a code. Every assumption is a signal. Every emotional loop is a frequency stamp. And repetition equals installation. The more often you feed the field a certain signal, the more stable that version of reality becomes. This is why awareness is so powerful. Not for self-judgment, but for intervention. Because you cannot change what you won't acknowledge. Once you see that your experience isn't fixed, that it's being rendered in real time based on your inputs, everything becomes editable. Let's talk about those inputs. There are 4 major feeders into the quantum field. Thought, the mental loops you allow to play out. Not just the words, but the tone behind them. Fear-based thoughts feed fear-based timelines. Emotion, the energetic signature you hold. As we've already explored, emotion is the command. The stronger the emotional charge, the faster the field responds. Identity, the version of yourself you consistently believe you are. I'm always struggling. I'm not ready. Things never work out for me. These are not opinions. They're broadcast declarations. Environment, not just where you live, but what you surround yourself with. The conversations you engage in, the content you consume, the energy fields you enter, all of this informs the composite signal you send. Now, none of this is happening to you. It's being fed by you. Every moment you check in with how you feel and what you're reinforcing, you're either programming the field consciously or letting it run old loops. This isn't about blame. It's about authorship. The good news? You can overwrite any timeline the moment you change the signal that created it. You don't need years of effort. You don't need to resolve every issue. You don't even need to fix what already happened. You just need to start feeding the field a new signal now. This doesn't require perfection. It requires consistency. Even small upgrades. Choosing a thought that feels slightly more empowering. Anchoring into one moment of peace. Dropping one loop of anxiety. These shifts begin a new feed. And the field responds immediately. Not always with fireworks, but with subtle rearrangements. New ideas. Unexpected ease. Glitches in the old pattern. Evidence that the frequency is taking hold. If you notice those moments and reinforce them, the feed stabilizes. This is where most people lose momentum. They shift slightly, see a result, and then revert, because they haven't practiced sustaining the new feed long enough for it to replace the old one. Think of it like this. Every frequency you feed the field is a vote. Every moment you hold it, the vote counts. At first, the old timeline may still seem dominant. Not because it's stronger, but because it has more votes stored over time. But once the new frequency gets enough reinforcement, it overtakes the default. The reality it represents begins to harden. And suddenly, what felt like a breakthrough becomes normal. That's not coincidence. That's frequency dominance. So if the field is always on, and your feed is always active, then mastery becomes a matter of stewardship. Steward your thoughts. Don't indulge the ones that build a world you don't want to live in. Steward your emotions. Don't suppress them, transmute them, move them, release them. Steward your identity. Don't rehearse a version of you that's expired. Steward your focus. Don't let it drift to stories that no longer serve. You don't have to control everything. You just have to feed the field what you do want it to echo. And echo it will. Because the field has no bias, no opinion, no preference, only resonance. If you keep broadcasting the frequency of possibility, the field will build from that possibility. If you keep feeding it with expectation, it will organize outcomes to meet that expectation. If you hold gratitude as your dominant tone, it will show you more reasons to maintain it. So from this point forward, drop the idea that the field is selective. It's not choosing for you. It's building from you. And you're the architect of every line of code. Every input matters. Every emotion counts. Every thought feeds. Every moment instructs. So ask yourself now, what are you feeding the field? And more importantly, what are you ready to feed it instead? You've been taught that if you want something, you have to go out and make it happen. Hustle harder. Push through. Stay focused. Sacrifice. Grind. And sometimes that works, but only temporarily and often at a cost. You burn out. You repeat patterns. You get the result, but it doesn't stay. Why? Because reality isn't responding to how hard you try. It's responding to what you are. Effort is physical. Frequency is foundational. And the quantum field doesn't organize itself based on motion. It organizes itself based on vibration. This is a truth most people resist. Not because it's unclear, but because it threatens the entire narrative of control they were raised with. But if you're willing to see it, you'll understand something life-changing. Nothing you desire is far away. It's just not in resonance yet. Let's go deeper. When you take action from a state of desperation, fear, or force, you're telling the field, I'm not there yet. It's hard to get what I want. I must struggle to succeed. And so the field complies. It mirrors that vibration. It gives you more experiences that affirm the story you're broadcasting. You get more blocks, more resistance, more chase. But when your frequency matches the reality where the thing you desire is already true, the field responds instantly because now you're a vibrational match for the result, not just the idea of it. This is why some people seem to flow through life while others grind. The flow isn't luck. It's alignment. Because in the quantum structure of existence, alignment overrides effort. Let's be precise. Effort comes from the assumption that you need to do more to become worthy, ready, or successful. Frequency alignment comes from knowing you already are that version, and therefore the field must adjust to reflect it. Think of it like this. Effort pushes reality. Frequency invites it. When you're in alignment, the universe bends without resistance. People show up. Timing clicks. Insights land. You still take action, but it's inspired, clean, and efficient. You're not forcing results. You're receiving what matches. This doesn't mean you sit around passively. It means your state becomes the generator, not your willpower. Let's apply this. Say you want to grow your income. You start a project and you hustle day and night. But underneath that action is a frequency of lack. I need this to work or I'll fail. Now, regardless of the action, the field is receiving the deeper message. And the field always reflects the root signal, not the performance. So you get delays. Clients back out. Payments stall. Not because the idea was wrong, but because the effort was misaligned. Now reverse it. Same project. But this time, you ground yourself in the energy of certainty. You hold the emotion of this is already done. You move with confidence, calm, and clarity, not because you're pretending, but because you've stabilized the signal of the version of you who already succeeded. Now the actions you take come from power, not pressure. And the field responds accordingly. Doors open. Support arrives. Momentum builds. Same project. Different frequency. Different outcome. Because frequency leads. Reality follows. This is the truth behind every breakthrough you've ever experienced. It didn't come from effort alone. It came from alignment. You stopped fighting. You got clear. You dropped resistance. You became the version of you who already had the result, even if only for a moment. And in that moment, reality reorganized. This is the essence of quantum shifting. Not doing more. Being differently. Let's also address the illusion of time. Many people say, I've been working at this for years and nothing's changed, but they've been broadcasting the same frequency the entire time. So the field has no choice but to keep presenting variations of the same story. Time doesn't move you forward. Frequency does. 1 minute of stabilized resonance will shift your life more than a decade of misaligned action. Why? Because you're not building reality from the outside in. You're tuning to it from the inside out. When your frequency shifts, your world recalibrates. Not slowly, immediately. Sometimes the external results take a moment to catch up. But the shift itself happens in the field first, and the material world simply echoes it. So when people ask, how long will it take? They're still thinking in terms of effort and time. But the real answer is, it takes as long as it takes you to stabilize the signal. And stability doesn't come from forcing. It comes from embodiment. You must become the version of yourself who lives in that reality, not by faking it, but by aligning with the emotional, mental, and energetic signature that version carries. That's what unlocks it. That's what activates the field. Effort can move the pieces. Frequency moves the entire board. So take this seriously. Every time you chase, force, or overthink, you're delaying alignment. But every time you relax into the knowing that the field is already building from your vibration, and you stabilize a frequency of wholeness, trust, and clarity, you accelerate results. That's not a belief system. That's how the mechanics work. You've seen this in reverse. When you expect the worst, things go wrong faster. That's not coincidence. That's precise resonance. So apply it consciously. Drop the struggle. Drop the need to prove. Drop the obsession with doing more. Instead, ask, what frequency am I embodying? What does the version of me who already has this feel like? Can I stabilize that emotion right now, regardless of circumstances? If you can answer yes, even briefly, you'll notice reality start to bend. Not by force, not by chance, but by match. You don't create what you want through effort. You experience what you are through frequency. And the moment you remember that, effort becomes optional, not necessary. You're not stuck. You're tuned. That life you're living, the one you think is your path or your story, is just one of countless possible timelines available to you. It's not fixed. It's not final. It's not fate. It's just the one you've been emotionally and energetically aligned with long enough for it to stabilize. Right now, at this exact moment, infinite versions of your life exist in the quantum field. Not as theory, as real options. There is a version of you who's already successful, already healthy, already at peace, already free, already connected, joyful, aligned, and thriving. That version doesn't need to be built. It doesn't need to be earned. It's already constructed. So why aren't you living it? Because timelines are frequency locked. You're on your current timeline not because it's meant to be, but because your signal matches it. When your identity, emotion, expectation, and belief align with a particular version of you, that version becomes real. The world arranges itself around it. Events unfold to support it. People appear to reinforce it. But the moment your signal shifts, so does the timeline. Most people never realize this. They stay locked in cycles not because they're broken, but because they keep feeding the same frequency loop. They react to circumstances as if those circumstances are immovable, not realizing that every reaction is a reselection of the timeline that created the problem. Let's make this clear. The timeline you're experiencing is not evidence of reality. It's evidence of resonance. This is why change often feels elusive. You try to make new choices while holding on to old emotions. You set new goals while still identifying as the version of you who never achieves them. You visualize new outcomes while fearing they'll never happen. And so the old timeline remains dominant. It's not because the new one isn't available. It's because it doesn't have enough energetic charge to become stable. Timelines don't respond to wishes. They respond to embodiment. You must become a vibrational match to the new version of you before the reality connected to it becomes visible. Not after, before. This is not about tricking the universe. It's about tuning your field. Because the universe isn't choosing your timeline. You are every second through your emotional field. And your emotional field is programmable. Let's get tactical. You want to shift timelines? Then you must stop reinforcing the one you're already on. That means interrupting thought loops, emotional spirals, and identity statements that keep anchoring you to the past version. Every time you say, "This always happens to me," you're choosing the same path. Every time you react the same way to the same trigger, you're plugging back into the same coordinates. Every time you rehearse old pain, disappointment, or fear, you are tuning to the broadcast of the version of you who stays there. It doesn't matter if it's justified. The field doesn't read fairness. It reads frequency. So the work becomes this: stop feeding the timeline you want to leave. Start stabilizing the signal of the timeline you want to live. This is not positive thinking. This is quantum navigation. You don't need to have all the steps. You don't need to fix everything first. You just need to become emotionally and energetically non-compatible with the version of you that's struggling. Non-compatible. That means you can no longer indulge the story. You can no longer embody the fear. You can no longer anchor into the state that formed the current loop. You interrupt it, and in the space that follows, you choose again. Choose how? Through emotion. You drop into the feeling of the future version of you, not mentally but somatically. You feel it in the body. You activate the signal. You hold it. And the longer you hold it, the more the field begins to stabilize the timeline that matches. This isn't magic. This is mechanics. Everything in the quantum field exists now, but you can only receive the version you're a match for. Think of it like a radio. If you're tuned to 88.7 FM, you can't hear what's playing on 105.3. Not because it's not broadcasting, but because you're not aligned with its frequency. Same with timelines. You don't need to destroy the current one. You just need to stop tuning to it. This is how rapid change happens. Not from force, from frequency. One stable shift in your emotional signature can reroute your life instantly. Not because you fixed anything, but because you selected something new. Selection is the superpower no one taught you. So use it. Start by asking, what version of me have I been energizing? What timeline have I been feeding? What state am I willing to stop normalizing? Then ask, what version of me already lives where I want to be? What does that feel like emotionally, physically, energetically? Can I bring that version online now, even for 60 seconds? Because once you feel it, you're no longer chasing it. You're living it, and the field will follow. There's nothing you have to wait for. There's no permission you need to get. There's no finish line to cross. The timeline you're on is optional. And the moment you stop choosing it, a new one begins. You've been told that beliefs live in your mind, as ideas, thoughts, or stories you picked up along the way. And while that's partially true, it misses the most important part. Beliefs are not just mental patterns. They are energetic structures. They're not just thoughts you think repeatedly. They are frequency fields, electromagnetic codes embedded in your signal. This means limiting beliefs don't just sit in your subconscious. They shape the very bandwidth of reality you're able to access. They're not passive. They're architectural. They're not just keeping you stuck mentally. They are tuning you into timelines where your limitations become real, visible, and reinforced. That's why you can't just think your way out of them. You have to shift your field. Let's make this concrete. Say you hold the belief, I'm not good enough. That belief doesn't only color how you think about yourself. It actively emits a frequency that becomes part of your energetic signature. That signature enters the quantum field as an instruction. The field, as always, reflects the signal back. Not to punish, to match. So what happens? You get passed over. You get overlooked. You attract criticism. You second-guess yourself. And every time that happens, it reinforces the original belief. Not because it's true, but because it's active. Now here's where it gets tricky. Most of your limiting beliefs are unconscious. They're not just ideas you can spot with a journal prompt. They're stored in your body. They're stored in your nervous system. They're stored in the field around you as low-level, ongoing electromagnetic loops. This is why affirmations often fail. You say, I am powerful, but the field still holds the echo of I'm powerless. The old belief has more energetic weight, so it dominates the return signal. This doesn't mean change is impossible. It means you must approach belief at the correct level, frequency. Limiting beliefs are frequencies you've practiced. That's all. They're not part of your soul. They're not permanent. They're not deep truths that define you. They are practiced energetic patterns. And what's practiced can be unpracticed. Let's break this into two phases. 1. Identification. You can't shift what you haven't seen. Start by looking at the repeating themes in your life. What outcomes keep showing up no matter how hard you try to change them? What feedback do you keep receiving from people, from results, from patterns? Behind every repeated result is a stabilized belief. If you keep attracting unavailable partners, there's likely a belief that says, I don't deserve full connection. If your income plateaus at a certain level, there may be a belief that says wealth isn't safe, or I have to work harder to earn more. If you always feel behind, there could be a belief running the frequency of, I'm never enough. Now, once you notice the pattern, don't argue with it. Don't try to be positive about it. Just observe it as a signal. This is key. Treat beliefs like energy fields, not moral issues. They're not signs that something is wrong with you. They're just indications of what you've been feeding the field. And once seen, they can be overwritten. 2. Disruption and replacement. The field responds to stabilized energy. So to shift a belief, you must destabilize the old pattern and stabilize a new one. Destabilizing doesn't mean fighting. It means interrupting the energetic feed. Every time the old belief gets triggered, pause. Recognize the emotion it brings up. Feel it fully, and then consciously refuse to feed it again. That's the first crack. Then you begin to introduce the new frequency. Not as a sentence, as a state. You don't just say, I am safe. You drop into the version of you who knows they're safe. You don't just say, I am worthy. You embody the feeling of being enough right now without conditions. When you feel the new belief instead of forcing it, the field begins to register a new signal. Repeat that process. Each time the old pattern shows up, you interrupt. You recalibrate. You stabilize the opposite frequency. And little by little, the new belief becomes dominant. Not because you convinced your mind, but because you reprogrammed the field. Let's be clear. Beliefs aren't fragile ideas. They're energetic codes. Some have been passed down generationally. Some were picked up through early emotional imprinting. Some were installed through trauma. But all of them, no matter how deep, are frequency loops. And frequency loops can be disrupted the moment you become aware of them and refuse to re-energize them. It's not about healing everything at once. It's about changing the signal you feed the field in this moment. Because this moment is the only one that writes reality. Every time you shift into a state that contradicts the old belief and hold it with emotional coherence, the field begins to organize around that new instruction. And what used to feel like truth starts to dissolve. You begin to see different results. You meet different people. You make different decisions. Not because the world changed, because your access point shifted. You're no longer matching the version of life built by the old code. You're plugged into a timeline that has no space for it. And the beauty of the field is this. Once the frequency is gone, the pattern vanishes. You don't have to undo all the damage. You don't have to clean up every mess. The signal changes. The script updates. So if you've been carrying a belief that says you're limited, broken, or behind, it's not your truth. It's just your tuning. And tuning can change in an instant. You're not here to fight old beliefs. You're here to outgrow their frequency. And once you do, the field obeys. You've heard it before. Act as if. Fake it till you make it. Pretend you're already there. And maybe you've tried it. Smiled when you didn't feel it. Repeated affirmations you didn't believe. Forced confidence over anxiety. Forced gratitude over frustration. But here's what you probably noticed. The results didn't stick. The changes didn't hold. The field didn't respond. Why? Because alignment cannot be faked. The quantum field doesn't respond to words. It doesn't respond to performance. It doesn't care how convincing you sound. It listens to vibration and only vibration. Your signal doesn't come from your surface behavior. It comes from your actual state. This is not about being perfect. It's about being energetically real. You can't override your current frequency by layering empty positivity on top of pain. You can't trick the field with enthusiasm if your core is broadcasting fear. You can't manifest peace while radiating control. And you don't need to, because true alignment isn't about pretending everything is fine. It's about becoming congruent. Congruence means your inner world, your thoughts, emotions, beliefs, and body state are all vibrating in the same direction. There's no internal split. No contradiction between what you say and what you actually feel. That's the signal the field responds to with precision and speed. Let's look at how this works in real time. Say you're trying to attract abundance. You speak confidently about success. You write affirmations. You repeat mantras. But underneath, there's a quiet tension. You don't trust the process. You don't fully believe it's possible. You still feel scarcity in your body. You check your bank account with anxiety. You hesitate before making decisions. Now ask yourself, what signal is the field actually picking up? It's not the affirmation. It's the frequency. The field doesn't care about your effort. It reflects your essence. That means the real work isn't faking alignment. It's stabilizing it. You can't bypass yourself. You can only calibrate. So how do you move from performance to authenticity? You start by noticing the dissonance. Ask, is what I'm saying matching how I feel? Am I pushing myself to look like I've shifted when I'm still holding the old emotion underneath? Am I trying to convince myself? Or am I actually living from the state I want to manifest? The answers will always show you where your frequency lives. From there, you drop the performance. You stop forcing the image of being high vibe. You stop pretending to have it all figured out. You stop spiritual bypassing. And you begin to feel the truth. This isn't weakness. This is precision. Because only when you meet yourself honestly in the emotional space you're actually in can you begin to shift that signal from within. You don't transcend fear by ignoring it. You move through it with full awareness. You don't become magnetic by pretending to be confident. You become magnetic by aligning with the version of you who knows they don't need to pretend. That's authenticity. And authenticity is the only frequency the field truly responds to. Why? Because the field is coherence-based. When your internal state becomes coherent, meaning your thoughts, emotions, and identity are in agreement, your signal becomes clean. No noise. No distortion. That's when things shift fast. Not because you finally said the right thing, but because your energy stopped contradicting itself. This is why people who say very little can change a room with their presence. They're not trying to project an image. They're just being. Their frequency is unified. You feel it. Others feel it. And the field reflects it without delay. Let's be clear. Alignment doesn't mean you never wobble. It means you know how to return. It doesn't mean constant bliss. It means consistency in the direction of your signal. It doesn't mean no fear. It means fear doesn't own the broadcast. You can be in alignment while uncomfortable, as long as you're congruent. That's power. It's not about always being in a good mood. It's about always being true. You can be aligned and grieving. You can be aligned and uncertain. You can be aligned and in transition. Because alignment isn't about surface. It's about honesty. If you're scared, feel it fully. Let it move through. Then, from that cleared space, choose a new signal. If you're unclear, admit it, don't fake certainty. Use the space of not knowing to reset. If you're hurt, don't rush to be okay. Acknowledge it. That raw honesty contains the energy required to shift timelines. The field doesn't need perfection. It needs precision. And nothing is more precise than authentic frequency. So stop asking, am I doing enough? Am I saying the right things? Am I manifesting correctly? Start asking, is my inner world matching the reality I say I want? Am I aligned with it emotionally, not just intellectually? Can I sustain that state with my whole being, even before results appear? Because when you can, you've already shifted. You don't need proof. You don't need signs. You don't need to be validated. You'll know because the noise is gone. The field will move, and you'll feel the click. Not because you faked it, but because you finally stopped pretending. Alignment is not a performance. It's not a role. It's not a mask. It's the truest version of you, felt, held, and broadcasted clearly. And that version, that's the one the universe recognizes without hesitation. You've heard of the law of attraction. You may have studied it, tested it, seen it work, or felt frustrated when it didn't. You were told that your thoughts create your reality, that like attracts like. and that you should think positively to attract better outcomes. But here's the truth. That idea was only a fragment. It was never the full picture. The law of attraction is real, but it's elementary. It's the training wheels of quantum creation. The full system is far more advanced, far more precise, and infinitely more powerful, because it's not just about attracting. It's about synchronizing. The real mechanism isn't desire. It's alignment. Let's clarify this. Attraction implies distance, as if the thing you want is out there, and your job is to bring it toward you. But in quantum mechanics, everything already exists. All possibilities, all timelines, all outcomes. Nothing is far away. Nothing needs to be pulled in. You don't attract reality. You tune into it. This is synchronization, the energetic process by which your internal state becomes a match to a pre-existing version of reality. When your signal aligns with that version, you and it become inseparable. Not because you chased it, but because you stopped broadcasting something else. The law of attraction was a doorway. Synchronization is the operating system. This explains why attraction techniques often feel incomplete. You visualize, but nothing changes. You make vision boards, but the results stay the same. You affirm, but feel flat. Because under the hood, you're still broadcasting a different frequency. And the field responds to signal, not slogans. Let's break down what synchronization actually means. It's the process of matching your internal reality, your thoughts, emotions, identity, and embodied state, to the version of life where your desire is already real. Not imagined, not longed for, lived. That means you don't just think about the result. You become the version of you who's already living inside that reality. You don't project it forward. You collapse it into now. That's the shift from attraction to synchronization. And it's not a mental game. It's an energetic reconfiguration. The law of attraction told you to think positively. Synchronization asks, what is your actual signal right now? Because if your signal says, this is hard, it's not working, I'm not there yet, then no matter how much you want the outcome, you're synchronized with the absence of it. The field doesn't judge. It mirrors. So to shift into the reality you want, you must match it in state, not someday but immediately. Let's take a real example. Say you want to live in freedom, financial, emotional, creative. The law of attraction would tell you to visualize that life, repeat affirmations, focus on freedom. But if your body still holds tension, if your nervous system's still bracing for failure, if your inner dialogue still says, I can't afford this, or I hope it works out, then your signal is broadcasting restriction. And restriction synchronizes with timelines where freedom remains just out of reach. Now shift the signal. What does freedom feel like in the body? How does the version of you who already lives in it breathe, walk, speak, act? What does their day feel like emotionally, not hypothetically but viscerally? When you begin to access that version of you and live from that vibration, synchronization starts. And results appear not as miracles, but as frequency compliance. This is the architecture behind quantum shifting. You don't manifest by asking. You manifest by embodying. The law of attraction was your introduction. Synchronization is your mastery. It requires more than desire. It requires state discipline. State discipline means choosing to feel, think, and behave in ways that are coherent with your chosen timeline, even before physical evidence shows up. Because once the signal is stable, the results are inevitable. Not because you earned them, not because you convinced the universe, but because you're now tuned to the version of life where those outcomes are already present. This is not wishful thinking. This is precision tuning. The frequency of confidence feels different than the frequency of hesitation. The frequency of gratitude feels different than the frequency of doubt. The frequency of wholeness feels different than the frequency of seeking. You know the difference. You've felt both. And your job now is to choose the one that matches your future until it becomes your present. This is the silent power of synchronization. No struggle, no chasing, no proving, just energetic clarity. That's why some people magnetize success without doing anything extraordinary. Their signal is clean. They're not thinking about having the thing. They are the person who has it, internally, consistently, automatically. and the field responds to who you are, not what you hope for. So if you've been stuck on the law of attraction, waiting, wishing, watching, it's time to level up. You're not here to attract scraps from the universe. You're here to consciously select timelines and step into them with full coherence. This is synchronization. This is embodiment. This is how reality bends, not slowly but instantly when the signal locks. The next version of your life is not far away. It's one frequency shift away, and you don't have to earn it. You just have to become it. Now, there's a misconception buried deep in modern manifestation culture that you are the sole architect of your life. That if you visualize hard enough, affirm long enough, think positively enough, everything will eventually bend to your will. But that's not how creation actually works. You are not creating reality alone. You are co-creating with the field. And the field is not some distant cosmic entity. It's the intelligent, responsive fabric of reality itself. It's alive. It's listening. It's responsive. And you're in relationship with it every moment, whether you realize it or not. This relationship isn't mystical. It's mechanical. You emit a signal. The field reflects it. But the field doesn't just echo, it collaborates. That means it doesn't give you exactly what you ask for. It gives you what matches, expands, and often evolves your frequency. You're not issuing demands. You're engaging in a conversation. And the quality of that conversation determines what shows up next. Let's clarify this. You may want clarity, and instead, the field brings you confusion. Not as punishment, but as a way to show you where you've been unclear with yourself. You may want more money, and instead, the field brings you a situation that forces you to finally value your time and energy. You may want love, and the field gives you solitude so you can stop outsourcing your worth. This isn't misalignment, it's co-creation. The field doesn't operate based on what's comfortable. It operates based on what's coherent. And sometimes that means it responds in ways that stretch you, not to make life hard, but to make the next timeline sustainable. So many people sabotage their shifts because they think the field is ignoring them. But it's not ignoring. It's answering in a deeper language. A language of alignment. This is where co-creation becomes advanced. You stop reacting to what appears as if it's wrong, and start reading it like data. Because everything the field brings you is feedback. You say you're ready for expansion. The field checks for integrity. You say you want alignment. The field surfaces everything that's out of sync. You say you're done with the old story. The field brings one final echo of it to confirm you've really stopped feeding it. This is not resistance. This is refinement. And the more you understand the intelligence of the field, the more precisely you can work with it, not against it. This changes how you show up. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you start asking, "What is this reflecting about my signal?" Instead of saying, "This isn't working," you begin to say, "This is information. What's the next frequency I need to hold?" That shift in attitude isn't just empowering. It's magnetic, because the field responds not just to emotion, but to maturity of energy. Mature energy doesn't panic when things don't go as planned. It doesn't collapse when timing shifts. It doesn't fight the process. It collaborates. It reads. It recalibrates. This is what it means to be a conscious co-creator. You don't just push your will onto the world. You listen. You feel. You align. You respond with awareness. And in doing so, the field starts trusting you with more clarity, more flow, more acceleration. Because now you're not reacting from ego. You're operating from signal. Let's go deeper. The field isn't just neutral space. It's conscious. It wants coherence. It seeks integrity. So when you say you want something but your signal says otherwise, the field doesn't reject you. It simply waits. It waits for the congruence. It waits for the stabilization. And when that happens, reality bends with astonishing speed. Because the field is already prepared. It's just waiting for your frequency to stop contradicting itself. This is why some people manifest breakthroughs that seem instant. It's not because they're special. It's because they've become stable enough to hold the signal long enough for the field to respond without conflict. That stability comes from trust, not just in yourself but in the field. You stop trying to control every step. You stop micromanaging the how. You stop panicking at every turn. You begin to understand that your job is not to make things happen. Your job is to hold the alignment and let the field handle what your mind can't see. The more you trust that process, the more the field accelerates your outcomes. Because resistance is not just emotional. It's vibrational friction. When you fight the field, you slow the response. When you collaborate, you collapse timelines. So what does co-creation actually look like? It looks like showing up every day and tuning your frequency before you touch your to-do list. It looks like listening to your body when it says, pause. Even when your brain says, push. It looks like seeing synchronicities not as luck, but as confirmation. It looks like releasing control without releasing intention. You stay anchored in the vision. You stay flexible with the path. That's co-creation. The universe is not an ATM. It's not a vending machine. It's not here to deliver on demand. It's your partner in building a reality that matches the truth of your vibration. And when you align with that truth, fully, consistently, unapologetically, the field delivers outcomes that are better than anything your mind could have planned. Because the field sees the whole board. It doesn't just respond to what you want. It responds to what your frequency can sustain. So stop trying to control the whole mechanism. Stop demanding. Stop doubting. Stop chasing. Instead, synchronize, listen, align, and hold. You're not creating reality in isolation. You're in conversation with the most intelligent force in existence. And that force is ready to collaborate the moment your frequency becomes clear. You've experienced it. The perfect person calling at the exact right time. A number repeating everywhere you look. A song playing with lyrics that answer your thoughts. An opportunity appearing seconds after you've made a decision. You call it coincidence. You call it weird. You maybe even say it's the universe winking at you. But synchronicity is not random. It's not a lucky glitch. It's not the universe having fun with you. Synchronicity is a message. A highly specific, highly intentional message, encoded in timing, pattern, and frequency, designed to confirm your signal. This feedback from the field about your alignment. When synchronicities appear, the field isn't teasing you. It's saying you've tuned in correctly. Stay here, because synchronicities aren't rewards. They're reflections. The more you experience them, the more evidence you have that your inner world is matching something new, and that the field is responding. They are checkpoints, markers, indicators that you're crossing into a timeline where the boundaries between thought and form, intention and event, start to blur. The appearance of synchronicity is the energetic fingerprint of resonance becoming real. Let's strip away the mysticism and look at the mechanics. The field is always responding to your vibration. When your frequency becomes coherent, your thoughts, emotions, and identity begin to match a desired outcome. The field doesn't just shift your external life. It begins to insert signals. These signals show up in ways that are hard to miss. Conversation, a number, an encounter, a feeling. You say something and someone nearby says the same thing at the same moment. You think about someone and they call seconds later. You feel stuck, and a video plays with the exact sentence you needed to hear. None of this is by chance. The quantum field is non-local. It's not bound by time and space. It doesn't need to plan or calculate. It aligns. And when your internal state becomes a stable frequency, everything around you begins to arrange itself in a way that reflects that frequency, including time, people, and events. This is synchronicity. It's not that you're making it happen. It's that you're finally tuned enough to see it happening. Because synchronicity isn't just a sign. It's also a signal receiver. When you acknowledge synchronicity, really receive it, feel it, respond to it, you reinforce the frequency that generated it. And that feedback loop strengthens. The field gets louder. The signals get clearer. The unfolding accelerates. But if you brush it off, say that was weird and move on, you miss the communication. You cut the signal. So the invitation is this: start treating synchronicities as data points. Not magic, not mystery, precision. Because the field uses synchronicity to map your progress through the quantum. Each time you shift into a new identity, new thoughts, new emotion, a new level of resonance, the field will often confirm with a synchronicity. Not because it has to, but because the nature of coherence is reflection. Let's get even clearer. Say you've been stuck in scarcity, and you shift into gratitude. Not just momentarily, but you really start living it, breathing it, embodying the version of you who already has more than enough. Suddenly, someone gives you a gift. An old debt is repaid. A random check arrives in the mail. These aren't prizes. They're pings. They're the field saying, you're locked in, keep holding this signal. Now here's the danger. If you treat these events like rare blessings or exceptions, you place them outside of your power. You say, wow, I got lucky. You reduce the infinite intelligence of the field to a one-time favor. But if you treat them as normal responses to your vibrational shift, you begin to stabilize the timeline they're connected to. Because the real value of synchronicity isn't the event. It's what you do with the signal. Do you trust it? Do you match it? Do you sustain the state that brought it? This is where most people short-circuit. They receive the signal. It excites them. They feel affirmed. But then their nervous system reverts. They start doubting, second-guessing, looking for proof again, and the signal fades. Not because the field stopped communicating, but because your reception wobbled. So how do you make synchronicity part of your new baseline instead of a rare spike? By turning every coincidence into conscious confirmation. When you notice a repeating number, pause. Don't just smile. Feel the alignment. When you overhear the exact message you needed, pause. Anchor it. When something effortless unfolds in your favor, pause. Don't chalk it up to luck. Lock it in. These moments aren't meant to be background noise. They're breadcrumbs. Follow them. Let them guide you deeper into the frequency you were already holding. Not because the field is rewarding you, but because it's recognizing you. You're not just watching the movie. You're authoring the script. And synchronicity is the field's way of whispering. You're writing something new, and we're with you. This changes how you walk through the world. You become aware that everything is communication, that there is no randomness, that the field is constantly guiding, mirroring, and fine-tuning your path based on the state you hold. So from now on, stop brushing off synchronicity as a curiosity. Start honoring it as confirmation, because it's not small. It's everything. It's proof that reality is shifting around you, not because you forced it, but because you aligned with it. And now, it's starting to show. You've been taught to focus on action, on habits, on routines. You've been told that success lives in behavior, that results come from what you do. But there's something deeper, something that shapes what you do, what shows up around you, and how fast things shift. It's your energy field. And your energy field isn't abstract. It's not hypothetical. It's the invisible architecture that determines how reality forms around you. It's not your aura. It's not a mystical glow. It's a real electromagnetic field, measurable, dynamic, and deeply intelligent. It holds more than just your vibe. It holds your codes. Those codes are instructions, and the field reads them as blueprints. The way your life is structured right now, the timing of events, the quality of your relationships, the flow of money, the state of your body, all of it is mirroring what's embedded in your field. This is not philosophy. This is physics. Let's be specific. Your field contains your emotional baseline, the default signal you emit when you're not trying to control anything. An identity imprint, the version of yourself you've rehearsed over and over until the field treats it as your true self. A memory clusters unresolved emotional patterns from the past that are still active, even if you're not consciously thinking about them. Expectation matrix, the silent assumptions you carry about how life works, what's possible, and what people are like. All of these, whether formed by repetition, trauma, joy, or belief, create a signature. That signature becomes your field. And the quantum field interacts with it like a design plan. It doesn't ask what you want. It reads the blueprint you're broadcasting and arranges material reality accordingly. This is why things seem to just happen to some people. Not because they're lucky, but because their field is coded for a certain kind of experience. If your field says, life is a struggle, you'll meet resistance at every turn. If your field says, everything works out for me, support will appear effortlessly. Your experience is a match to your energetic infrastructure. Here's the key: your energy field is not fixed. It's living. It updates in real time. It responds to your choices, can be rewritten, but not through mental effort, through signal work. When you shift your dominant emotions, your identity, your expectations, your field begins to recode. And once the blueprint changes, the structures of your life must follow. This is not a maybe. It's not a wish. It's law. The external world doesn't initiate the change. It reflects the new field you stabilized. Let's go deeper. Most people try to build a new life from the outside in. They take different actions, set better goals, change their schedules. But all the while, their field remains coded with the old blueprint. And because of that, the old outcomes keep regenerating, like a program that reloads even after you hit refresh. Why? Because the source code was never rewritten. Until you change the field, the external world can only reconfigure temporarily. This is why sabotage happens, why growth fades, why patterns repeat. Not because you failed, because the architecture never updated. Your field still held the same emotional signatures, the same hidden beliefs, the same energetic loops. And the blueprint kept building based on that. This isn't bad news. This is your opportunity. Because once you understand that your field is living, that it moves with you, you stop trying to manipulate the surface and start working with the source. You start asking, what is my field holding right now? What frequency is stabilized in my nervous system? What identity is the field treating as me? What blueprint am I transmitting that life keeps building around? This self-inquiry doesn't require analysis. It requires presence. You feel your field. You don't think your way into it. And once you sense what's being held, you interrupt it. Not with force, with frequency. You override the blueprint by stabilizing a new signal. This is the work of real-time recoding. It means feeling the emotion of the version of you who lives a completely different reality, and letting that feeling saturate your system until the field no longer has access to the old imprint. When the emotional data changes, the field's instructions change. You're not begging life to upgrade. You're feeding it a new plan, and it builds what you send. Not someday. Immediately. The field doesn't operate on a delay. It organizes itself around whatever blueprint is most stable. So if your field says, I'm ready, but your frequency still says, I'm afraid, the field will stabilize hesitation. Not because it's punishing you, but because that's the most consistent signal. Stability wins. Every time. So ask yourself, what do you keep rehearsing emotionally? What does your field know is normal? Because whatever it is, it's building your next timeline. This is not something to fear. It's something to master. You don't have to know the entire plan. You don't have to rewrite every line of code manually. You just have to stabilize the emotional state of the version of you who's already in the future you've been asking for. When you do that, when that signal becomes your dominant state, the field updates the blueprint without hesitation. Life shifts. Circumstances reorganize. Events begin to confirm the new code. Not through luck, through law. Because your energy field is not passive. It's not just responding. It's instructing. And when you recode it consciously, nothing stays the same. The changes may begin subtly. A conversation, a nudge, a new idea. But they will become undeniable, unavoidable, irreversible. Because once the blueprint changes, the structure has to. You've had moments of breakthrough, a rush of clarity, a burst of energy, an undeniable sense that everything is shifting. And for a while it does. You feel different. You think differently. Synchronicities begin to appear. Life seems to respond. But then, without warning, the momentum fades. The clarity dulls. The energy dips. Things stall, and you're back in the same loop, wondering what happened. Here's the answer. It wasn't that the breakthrough was false. It wasn't that you imagined the shift. It's not that the method didn't work. The truth is simple: you reverted. More specifically, your frequency reverted. Frequency reversion is the #1 reason people get stuck. Not because they're doing something wrong. Not because they didn't try hard enough. But because their field defaulted back to the old signature. the one that shaped the version of reality they were trying to leave behind. You didn't lose your progress. You lost your signal lock. Let's break this down. When you have a breakthrough, whether emotional, mental, or energetic, what's actually happening is this. You've temporarily shifted into a new frequency. That shift places you in contact with a new version of the field. And that version begins organizing differently. New ideas, different behaviors, new feedback from reality. But if that frequency isn't stabilized, meaning you don't maintain it long enough for the new timeline to become dominant, your field will eventually snap back to the most familiar signal. That's not failure. That's physics. Because your field is always trying to stabilize the signal with the strongest momentum. So if your default frequency, the one you've been running for years, is still charged with emotional data, old identity patterns, unresolved fear or guilt, then unless you reinforce the new signal intentionally, the old one will reclaim the lead. This is frequency reversion. And it's the invisible ceiling behind so many frustrating experiences. Why do I always end up back here? Why do things improve, then collapse? Why do I feel like I take 2 steps forward and 3 steps back? It's not mindset. It's not motivation. It's frequency memory. Your field remembers the old pattern. And if you don't consciously recalibrate, it will gravitate back to it, simply because it's familiar. This is why people repeat relationships, financial cycles, emotional states. Not because they like the experience, but because the field is still coded to default there. The good news? Reversion can be interrupted. But it requires one thing most people avoid: consistency without evidence. Because in the early stage of a frequency shift, the new timeline hasn't had time to fully form. It's fragile. It's new. It hasn't gathered enough momentum to dominate. And that's where the test comes. Can you hold the signal of the new version of you, the one who's already shifted, even when reality hasn't caught up yet? Because if you can, the field will lock into the new frequency. And when it locks, the timeline stabilizes. But if you doubt, hesitate, or revert to old emotional habits, the lock breaks, and the old pattern returns. It's not the field's fault. It's not a failure. It's signal instability. So how do you stop reverting? You anchor the frequency. That means, you don't rely on external proof, you become the proof. You don't wait for validation, you hold the emotion of already having it. You don't ask, is this working? Because the moment you do, you're no longer in the new frequency. The real mastery is emotional repetition. Just like the old timeline was built by repeated emotional data, the new one must be reinforced the same way. You hold the new emotion: gratitude, power, joy, trust. Not once, but daily. Not only when it's easy, but especially when it's hard. You rehearse the feeling of already being in the new reality, until it becomes more familiar than the old one, until the field recognizes it as your new baseline. This is not bypassing. This is reprogramming. You're not pretending. You're prioritizing. You're choosing which version of you becomes real. And the field will always comply, but only when the signal is stable enough to sustain the shift. Think of it like this. Every time you waver, you drain voltage from the new frequency. Every time you hold it, especially in moments where the old pattern tries to return, you increase the current. Eventually, the new frequency becomes the default. And that's when you stop slipping. That's when life stops rubber banding you back into old timelines. That's when the shift becomes permanent. Because the field no longer remembers you as the old version. The charge is gone. The code is rewritten. The feedback loop resets. And reality starts to reflect only what the new signal emits. So if you feel like you've been stuck in repeat cycles, understand this. It's not your ability that's broken. It's not your future that's blocked. It's your frequency that's been reverting. And that ends the moment you decide to stabilize the new signal, no matter what appears. Don't wait for it to feel natural. Don't wait for proof. Don't wait until Monday. Choose the state. Hold the state. Repeat the state. Until the old frequency has nothing left to return to. This is how you break the cycle. This is how you move forward without fallback. This is how you make quantum shifts stick. Not through force. Through frequency endurance. You've been told meditation is about relaxation. About slowing down. About calming your thoughts. sitting in silence, focusing on your breath, emptying the mind. But that's only the surface. The real function of meditation isn't stillness, it's signal access. It's not about checking out, it's about tuning in. When practiced correctly, meditation isn't a retreat from the world. It's a return to the source code. It's the most direct interface you have with the field. And it's how you consciously shift the frequency your reality is built on. Let's break this open. Your conscious mind, your stream of thought, analysis, and identity, is constantly sending instructions to the field. But it's also riddled with interference. Noise, conditioning, memory, reaction. That noise distorts your signal. So when your surface mind is cluttered, the field receives a jumbled broadcast. That's why shifts feel inconsistent, why progress reverses, why results seem delayed. Meditation clears the noise, not to relax, but to regain precision. The moment you drop beneath thought, into awareness, presence, breath, the distortion begins to fade. The signal sharpens. And when that signal sharpens, access opens. Access to what? To the intelligence of the field. To your multidimensional identity. To the layer of you that isn't reacting but selecting. That layer, the one beneath the story, is where all real creation begins. Let's make it even clearer. Your body is a tuning fork. Your mind is an amplifier. And your awareness, pure, still, silent, is the dial. When you enter meditation, you're not escaping the world. You're bypassing the noise long enough to make contact with the version of you that already exists in the future you've been trying to reach. That version isn't distant. It's frequency-based. And the moment you enter the stillness behind thought, you can begin to feel that version. Tune to it. Merge with it. That's the access point. And here's what most people miss. You don't meditate to quiet your mind. You meditate to enter the layer of self that transcends the mind entirely. In that space, beyond narrative, beyond effort, your signal becomes clean. And the cleaner the signal, the faster the field responds. That's why deep meditation can shift your external world. Not because the world changes in that moment, but because your access to reality does. From that state, you're no longer reacting to what's happening. You're selecting the next timeline through coherent frequency. You begin to feel it viscerally. You don't just think the version of you who's successful, you become it vibrationally, emotionally, energetically. You hold that version. You breathe that version. And the field receives it as instruction. This is what makes meditation a quantum tool, not a wellness trend. You're not just lowering stress. You're issuing new commands to the blueprint of reality. Let's dismantle another myth. You don't need to meditate for hours. You need to tune precisely. 1 minute of deep access, where you fully shift into the emotional state of the future version of you, is more powerful than 20 minutes of shallow stillness. It's not the duration, it's the depth of connection. Depth comes when you drop from the beta wave chatter of the surface mind into the alpha and theta layers of consciousness, the layers where the subconscious opens and the signal can be rewritten. And this doesn't require perfection. It requires presence. You don't need to stop thoughts. You just need to stop feeding them. When thoughts arise, you notice. You return. You hold. You feel. And in that return, again and again, you build signal integrity. Eventually, you reach a threshold. You enter that silent layer not as a visitor, but as its occupant. You stop trying to feel better and begin to exist as the new frequency. From that space, you can visualize. You can feel. You can download. And when you do, it sticks. Because the signal wasn't coming from your conscious effort. It was coming from your field. You're not layering positive thinking on top of noise. You're coding the field from the signal's original source. That's why meditation becomes a laboratory for shifting timelines. You go in not to escape, but to rewire. You go in to meet the version of you who's already arrived. And the more often you meet them, the easier it is to carry their state into waking life. That's the goal. Not to sit in silence all day, but to emerge from that space with your signal upgraded, so when you move through life, the field responds to who you've become, not who you were. You can feel the difference. The way you speak changes. The way people respond changes. Opportunities flow with less friction. You're no longer chasing. You're resonating. Because you're no longer broadcasting from fear, doubt, or lack. You're broadcasting from access. So forget the idea that meditation is about doing nothing. You're doing the most powerful thing possible. You're dropping beneath distortion. You're aligning with truth. You're emitting a cleaner signal. And the field, always listening, adjusts accordingly. Every time you meditate, you're not disconnecting. You're connecting deeper. With the field. With your future. With your real power. And once you remember that, meditation stops being a task and becomes a portal. A portal that's always available, always open, always one breath away. Desire is where most people start. You want more. You want better. You want different. And that's natural. Desire is the spark that signals expansion is possible. But desire alone changes nothing. You can want something with all your heart. You can think about it constantly. You can write it down every morning, visualize it every night, and still remain in the same loop. Because the field doesn't respond to what you want. It responds to what you are. And what you are is not defined by your desires. It's defined by your identity. Identity is not personality. It's not ego. It's not labels. It's your vibrational baseline. It's the energetic definition you carry of yourself, the version of me that you've practiced so consistently, the field treats it as fact. And that identity sends a signal. That signal becomes your default timeline. So when there's a gap between what you desire and who you believe you are, the desire doesn't land. The field doesn't reject it, it just mirrors the dominant identity. This is why people want abundance but live in survival. Why they want love but live in self-protection. Why they want purpose but carry the identity of uncertainty. Desire is not enough. If the version of you that holds the desire doesn't match the version of you that's being broadcast into the field, the desire remains unrealized. Not because it's impossible, but because there's no signal coherence. Let's get specific. Say you desire to be financially free. You want ease, flow, freedom of choice. But your identity, the internal image you carry, is still wrapped in fear, lack, and unworthiness. You identify as someone who always just gets by, who never has enough, who has to struggle. Now ask, which one is the field reflecting? It's not responding to the desire. It's reflecting the identity. Because the field isn't listening to what you say. It's reading what you believe you are. Here's the key. Every reality is already constructed in the field. The only thing that determines whether or not you experience it is whether your identity is tuned to that version. So the fastest way to shift isn't to amplify desire. It's to update identity. You must become the version of you who already lives the reality you desire, not mentally, but vibrationally. You start asking, how does that version feel? What do they believe about themselves? How do they think, act, speak, decide? And then you live that way now. Not to fake it, not to impress anyone, but to shift the signal so cleanly that the field has no choice but to match it. Let's dismantle a myth here. Identity is not fixed. You're not just the way you are. You're just the way you've practiced being. And practice builds momentum. That momentum stabilizes your signal. But momentum can be redirected. You don't need to fight the old identity. You need to stop rehearsing it. Every time you say, I've always been like this. This is just who I am. I've never been good at that. You are not stating facts. You are reinforcing a field definition. And the field builds accordingly. So what happens when you stop feeding the old identity and begin broadcasting the one that matches your future? Reality bends. Because now your desire isn't just an idea. It's a signal. And signal trumps wish. That's why some people manifest rapidly. Not because they want more, but because they've become the version of themselves who already has it. Their inner world is congruent with the timeline they're stepping into. The field doesn't see a difference between their self-concept and their circumstances. So it brings circumstances into alignment. That's coherence. That's what desire alone can't do. So if you've been stuck in the loop of wanting but not receiving, don't try harder. Tune deeper. Desire is the door. Identity is the key. You must close the gap between what you hope for and who you identify as. Because until that shift happens, you're still broadcasting the frequency of the version of you who lives without the thing you say you want. And the field reflects that version. This doesn't mean you need to be perfect. It means you need to be precise. Every day, every moment, you're feeding the field instructions through your self-concept. So ask, who am I being right now? What version of me is operating this moment? Does this version match the timeline I want to live in? If not, shift. Not later. Now, identity is not a long-term project. It's an immediate frequency. The more often you shift into the desired version, the more stable that version becomes. Eventually, it takes over. You stop hoping. You stop forcing. You stop reaching. You just are. And the field, always listening, reshapes reality around the signal of who you've become. That's real manifestation. Not from desire, from identity match. You've been told you have to build your future, piece by piece, step by step. Plan it, earn it, chase it, construct it from the ground up. But here's what that narrative misses. Your future already exists, not as imagination, as frequency, as structure, as a full, living, breathing version of reality, waiting to be tuned into. You are not here to create it from scratch. You are here to select it. Everything you think you want, the job, the relationship, the wealth, the freedom, the clarity, is already present as a possibility in the quantum field. Not someday. Not hypothetically. Now, the quantum field contains every version of you that could ever exist. Every choice you could ever make. Every timeline you could ever walk. They're not potential. They're real. They're not imagined. They're encoded. They're not in the future. They're outside of time. And you don't need to make them happen. You need to match them. This is not theory. This is how non-locality works. In quantum physics, particles exist in multiple states until one is observed. That means reality doesn't move forward in a straight line. You're not moving toward your future. You're tuning into a version of it. You're changing stations, not building the tower. Let's make this real. When you want something, it feels far away. You think in terms of steps, goals, timelines. But what's actually happening is this: you're receiving the signal of a version of you who already has it. That version is calling you not to build it, but to sync with it. And syncing doesn't happen through time. It happens through state. You match the emotion. You hold the vibration. You feel the identity. And then the shift begins. You don't force anything. You don't beg. You don't wait. You become the version of you that already lives in the new reality. And the quantum field responds instantly. Not because you changed the world, but because you changed the channel. Let's be exact. You're not manifesting from lack. You're accessing from presence. That means the field doesn't respond to your desires. It responds to your frequency's location. Where you are vibrationally determines which timeline collapses into your experience. That's not magic. That's mechanics. The version of you that's already living your ideal future isn't waiting to be born. It's transmitting now, but most people never make contact with it. Why? Because they're too busy reacting to the version of reality they're already tuned to. They're obsessed with problems. They're looping on identity. They're emotionally anchored to the past. And the field mirrors it all faithfully. So they stay stuck in the illusion that life is linear, that they must earn transformation. But transformation doesn't require construction. It requires alignment. You don't move the future into reach. You move yourself into range. That's what tuning means. When you tune into a new frequency, you're not bringing the future closer. You're bringing your field into resonance with a timeline where that future is already present. And once that resonance holds, the shift is automatic. Not eventually. Immediately. You begin to see signs. You notice changes. You feel inner movement before anything external happens. That movement is the timeline opening. The field isn't static. It's fluid. It's always arranging around the most stable signal. And the most stable signal is the one you feel as true, not the one you hope for. This is why real change doesn't take years. It takes a clean signal and a moment of precision. Let's flip the frame. Don't ask, how do I get there? Ask, what version of me already lives there? And how do I tune to them right now? because that version isn't better than you. They're not more evolved. They're not more worthy. They're simply broadcasting a different frequency. And frequency is a choice. A choice to stop reacting to the past. A choice to stop looping in doubt. A choice to stop waiting for proof. And instead, feel the signal of the future you're ready to step into. That means dropping into the emotional state of already having. Even if it feels unfamiliar. Even if your current reality shows none of it yet. Because once you make that feeling your normal, the field recognizes it as your new home base. And then the material reality begins to move because it must. This is not imagination. This is synchronization. Every time you align to the feeling of the desired future, you collapse the gap between now and then. Eventually, the future becomes the present, not because you chased it, but because you stopped tuning to anything else. This is how timelines work. You're not climbing a ladder. You're switching trains. And the switch is vibrational, not physical. So stop looking for the steps. Stop trying to predict the how. Stop thinking of your dream life as something out there. It's here. It's broadcasting. And it's waiting for your field to match. You're not creating the future from scratch. You're choosing which version to experience. And the chooser, the selector, the tuner, is you. There's no scoreboard, no divine ledger, no system of cosmic reward and punishment. The field doesn't keep moral records. It doesn't tally how good you've been. It doesn't grade your effort. It reflects. That's all it does. The quantum field isn't a judge. It's a mirror. It doesn't care what you deserve. It doesn't care what you believe is fair. It doesn't care what you think should or shouldn't happen. It takes your signal exactly as it is and builds a version of reality that matches it. This is radical, because it means the field isn't measuring your worth. It's reading your vibration. If your vibration says, I am not enough, the field reflects that. If your vibration says, I'm already whole, the field reflects that. If your vibration says, I'll never catch a break, it reflects that. It's not punishing you. It's not testing you. It's not trying to teach you a lesson. It's showing you your frequency in physical form. Let's be exact. If you look around and see chaos, stagnation, or struggle, you're not cursed. You're tuned. If life feels like a fight, the field isn't attacking you. It's mirroring the signal you've unconsciously normalized. If things are flowing with ease, synchronicity, and support, you're not just lucky. Your vibration has become clear enough to reflect that flow. The field is brutally honest. It won't lie to you. It won't pretend things are better or worse than they are. It will give you precisely what matches your state with perfect fidelity. This is what makes the field so powerful and so neutral. It does not filter your requests. It does not evaluate your intentions. It does not correct your mistakes. It simply scans for signal and reflects it in the form of time, space, events, people, and outcomes. So the question isn't, why is the universe doing this to me? The real question is, what is my field broadcasting that this experience matches? When you understand this, blame dissolves. You stop blaming others. You stop blaming the world. You stop blaming yourself. Because you see what's actually happening. Reality is a mirror, not a test. And that means the only thing you ever need to shift is the signal you're sending. This is both the most liberating and confronting truth there is. It means you are 100% responsible, not in a guilt-based way, but in a signal-based way. You don't have to earn anything. You don't have to justify your dreams. You don't have to get it right. You just have to shift the frequency you live from. So when something painful shows up, the old reflex is to ask, what did I do wrong? But a better question is, what part of me is still resonating with this experience? When you stop treating events as punishment and start seeing them as feedback, everything changes. Because now, the pain isn't proof of failure. It's data. It's the field showing you where the signal hasn't yet updated. And the moment you update it, not intellectually but emotionally, energetically, the field responds. Not weeks later, not years later. Now, it doesn't delay reflection. It doesn't resist change. It doesn't hesitate to mirror your upgrade. This is why the most empowered people don't take things personally. They understand. The field is not judging me. The field is not rewarding or punishing me. The field is reflecting me. So they stop trying to manipulate outcomes and focus on stabilizing their signal. Let's take this deeper. If you walk into a room and feel ignored, it's not about the people. Your field is emitting, "I'm invisible." And the field is creating a version of reality that supports that narrative. If you try something new and it immediately collapses, it's not the universe telling you to quit. It's showing you that part of your frequency still expects failure, and you now have the chance to clean that signal. If you repeat the same relational pattern again and again, it's not that you attract the wrong people. It's that the field is faithfully arranging matches for the emotional blueprint you carry. It's not personal. It's not emotional. It's energetic law. And the moment you take that personally, you re-anchor the signal. But the moment you see it clearly and choose differently, the mirror begins to reflect something new. This is what makes quantum change so immediate. It doesn't require long detours. It doesn't require elaborate strategies. It requires an honest read of the reflection and a deliberate update to the field. So how do you update the field? You stop fighting the mirror. You stop trying to rearrange the reflection. You change the source. That means feel the version of you who already lives the life you want. Stabilize the emotion of already having it, not as fantasy but as signal. Rehearse the frequency until the mirror has no choice but to catch up. And it will, every time, because the field doesn't judge. It doesn't delay. It doesn't debate. It reflects. And once you understand that, you stop looking for permission. You stop asking for signs. You stop wondering when things will shift. You become the shift. You hold the frequency. You watch the mirror align. That's not theory. That's your power. You've been conditioned to believe that success comes from trying harder, from pushing, from forcing, from effort that looks like struggle. But in the quantum field, trying is not power. Trying is resistance. Trying is misalignment. Trying is proof you still believe what you want is separate from you. And separation is what keeps it away. The most powerful manifestors don't try. They match. They're not working harder than you. They're not more talented, more enlightened, or more deserving. They've simply mastered one thing: frequency precision. They know how to enter the emotional, mental, and energetic state of the version of themselves who already has the result. And they live from that state, not occasionally but consistently. No struggle, no strain, no reaching. They emit the signal of already. And the field complies. Let's get surgical. Trying says, "I don't have it yet. It's not here. I need to make this happen." Matching says, "This is normal for me. This is who I am. This is my signal." And life reflects it. One emits lack. The other emits coherence. The field doesn't respond to your effort. It responds to your calibration. And calibration has nothing to do with time. It has everything to do with signal integrity. So if you're trying to manifest something and it feels heavy, complicated, or out of reach, you're not matching. You're chasing. Trying keeps the field in waiting mode. Matching brings it into present mode. Because in the field, all possibilities exist now. There is no someday. There is only frequency match or mismatch. That's it. This is why some people manifest what they want almost effortlessly. They're not even thinking about it constantly. They're being the version of themselves that matches it, even when they're not trying. It's unconscious for them. It's encoded. So the field doesn't interpret their desire as a request. It interprets it as already done. And then reality arranges accordingly. This is where most people get it backward. They try to feel good to get what they want, but they're still feeling good from a place of hope, not certainty. Hope is not a match. Certainty is. Hope says, maybe one day. Certainty says, this is who I am. You feel the difference immediately. One has tension. The other has command. Not arrogance, clarity. Because matching isn't about pretending. It's about remembering. Remembering that the version of you who already has what you want is real and available right now. And when you shift into that version, even if only internally, the field receives the update. Not because you tried hard. Because you tuned accurately. Trying often means you're focused on fixing. Matching means you're focused on embodying. One is about solving a problem. The other is about stabilizing a signal. Let's be precise. When you want more money, and you start obsessing over it, scripting, affirming, visualizing, but all of it comes from a place of needing it, the field hears one thing: lack. Even if your words are positive, the underlying signal is scarcity. So what does the field reflect? Experiences that match the emotional state of not enough. Now flip it. You stop obsessing. You stop trying. You drop into the feeling of already being supported, already being resourced. You stabilize that frequency not to get money, but because that's who you are now. Now you're not chasing the outcome. You're emitting it. And the field, without resistance, mirrors that new coherence. This is not philosophy. This is design. The quantum field is precise. It doesn't misunderstand signals. It doesn't respond to language. It responds to vibration. So when your words say, "I am abundant," but your frequency says, "I'm still afraid," the field listens to the frequency. Trying is a symptom of mistrust. Matching is a symptom of embodiment. Embodiment doesn't require evidence. It requires stabilization. You don't wait for the thing to arrive to feel the identity. You feel the identity until the thing has no choice but to arrive. Because by then, it's just matching you. Let's clear something up. Not trying doesn't mean not doing. The most powerful manifestors still take action, but their action is aligned, not desperate. Comes from inner resonance, not external anxiety. Feels inevitable, not forced. They don't act to make something happen. They act because it's who they are. Their state drives their strategy, not the other way around. So ask yourself, are you acting from being or acting to become? One says, "I already am." The other says, "I hope this works." Only one creates results that last. Because the moment you shift into being, effort collapses. You stop looking for the secret. You stop asking when it will happen. You stop tracking every sign. You simply live the frequency and let the mirror do its job. That's how it's always worked. That's how it will always work. The field doesn't reward trying. It reflects matching. And when you stop chasing and start calibrating, you'll understand why some people seem to get everything they want. Not because they worked harder, but because they aligned cleaner. Thoughts aren't random. They're not just passing clouds. They're not background noise. Every thought you think is a signal. And every signal is a choice. And every choice is a timeline. That means every thought you entertain is a point of alignment. Not just with an emotion, but with a version of reality. This is what most people never realize. Your thoughts aren't just reflections of how you feel. They're activators. They're selectors. Every time you repeat a thought, you reinforce a timeline. You reinforce an identity. You reinforce a field instruction. And the field is listening. Always. It doesn't care if the thought is deliberate or unconscious. It doesn't care if you meant it or not. It doesn't care if it was just a passing moment. It mirrors whatever signal you stabilize. And thoughts are how signals begin. You don't have to act on a thought to activate it. You don't have to speak it aloud. Just thinking it, feeding it, believing it is enough for the field to begin matching that signal. Now, does that mean every fleeting negative thought ruins everything? No, but it does mean your most rehearsed thoughts are writing your script. You may think your circumstances are shaping your thoughts, but the truth is your thoughts are scripting your circumstances, because each one is a fork in the energetic road. You can choose to think, "I always mess this up," or you can choose, "I'm calibrating to precision now." You can choose, "No one ever sees me," or you can choose, "My energy is visible to the people who matter." You can choose, "This will never work," or you can choose, "This is already aligning." Each one takes you to a different version of reality. Not immediately, but inevitably, because the field doesn't manifest your one-time ideas. It manifests the pattern, and patterns begin with thought. Here's what changes everything. When you realize that thought is not reaction, it's creation. It's not commentary, it's code. Every time you choose a thought that aligns with your desired timeline, even if your external world says otherwise, you reinforce that version of yourself. And the more often you choose it, the more natural it becomes. Eventually, it's not something you have to try to think. It becomes your automatic filter, your default internal broadcast. And the field, faithful, neutral, precise, begins to mirror that back. This is why it's so easy to stay stuck. You don't need to make bad decisions. You don't need to take wrong actions. You just need to keep thinking thoughts that align with the version of you who stays small. That's enough to lock the field in place. So if you want to shift, you don't need to start by forcing results. You start by choosing thoughts that belong to your future. Not the ones that feel true. Not the ones that match your history. The ones that align with the version of you that already exists in the field, the one you want to experience now. Because thought isn't just inner noise. It's a selection device. You're not just thinking. You're picking. And every time you pick the thought of your future, you reinforce the timeline that brings it closer. This is why awareness is everything. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be present. Present enough to notice the moment when your mind wants to recycle the old program. And powerful enough to say, not this time. You catch the thought before it gains momentum. You pivot. You shift. You reselect. Not from panic. From clarity. You remember, every thought is not just a mental event. It's an energetic instruction. So when you think, I'm stuck, you're not just expressing frustration. You're telling the field what to stabilize. When you think, I can't, you're not just being honest, you're building that version of reality. But when you think, this version of me is already arriving, or the field is moving because I'm aligned, or I don't need proof, I am the proof. You're not lying to yourself. You're feeding the field the next blueprint. This is where mental discipline becomes spiritual power. Not because you suppress your truth, but because you refine what truth you're choosing to make real. You become aware that the story you repeat is not just self-talk. It's a construction signal. So you stop arguing for your limitations. You stop narrating your fear. You stop broadcasting from the past. And you begin thinking in a new language. A language of calibration, of coherence, of confirmation. This is how the timeline begins to bend. Not by thinking positively to escape reality, but by choosing thoughts that reflect the identity you're stepping into. Because every thought is a tuning fork. Every thought is a reality selector. Every thought is a choice point. So the next time you catch a loop that feels familiar, don't judge it. Just pause and ask, does this thought match the timeline I want to experience? If it doesn't, shift it. Even if it feels fake. Even if it feels awkward. Because repetition rewires reality. And eventually, the new thought becomes your new identity. The new identity becomes your new frequency. And the new frequency becomes your new life. Need is one of the strongest emotional forces you can emit. And not in a good way, because need is lack amplified. It's a declaration to the field that says, this isn't here yet. I don't have it. I'm incomplete until I do. And the field, which always reflects, never judges, simply responds with matching experiences. Experiences that affirm the absence, the gap, the delay. This is why the fastest way to shift reality is not by obsessing, scripting, chasing, or praying harder. It's by dropping the need entirely. When you release need, you signal to the field, this version of reality is already stabilized. I'm no longer seeking. I'm residing in the frequency. And that's when everything begins to move, not because you want it less, but because you're no longer pushing it away. Let's get precise. Need says, I have to have this. If I don't, I'll be stuck. This must happen now. That emotion creates resistance. It pulls you out of the timeline where the thing already exists and anchors you into the one where it remains missing. You become addicted to the absence. And the field mirrors that addiction with delay. But when you drop the need, the energy shifts instantly. You move from desperation to presence, from force to receptivity, from chasing to matching. This doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop gripping. It means your identity no longer hinges on the outcome. Because here's what most people miss. The desire is not the problem. The clinging to it is. Desire is natural. is how you sense new timelines calling. But when desire turns into fixation, into emotional pressure, you create static in your signal. And the field responds to that static with confusion, inconsistency, and delay. The solution: let go of the emotional need and tune into the version of you who already lives the result. That version isn't desperate. That version isn't waiting. That version isn't begging the field for confirmation. They're living it. They're normalizing it. They're being it. And that's the signal that collapses time. Here's the paradox. When you no longer need it to happen, it can happen. When you're not grasping for it, it's free to flow. When you're not proving your worthiness, the field no longer reflects your doubt. Because need is built on one idea: I'm not whole without this. And the moment you buy into that belief, you fragment your field. You create a frequency of incompletion. And reality mirrors it faithfully. This is why people can want something badly for years and never see it. Not because they don't deserve it. Not because they didn't try hard enough. But because their dominant frequency was rooted in lack. Not longing. Not desire. Need. Need signals the absence. Presence signals the arrival. You don't shift by convincing the field. You shift by embodying the version of you who doesn't need the shift to feel whole. And from that energy, calm, clear, coherent, the field opens. Think of every breakthrough you've ever had. The moment it arrived, were you desperate? Or were you detached? Relaxed? Peace? That's not coincidence. That's physics. You weren't resisting. You were matching. You weren't begging. You were receiving. Let's be direct. The more you chase, the more you push it away. The more you need, the longer it takes. The more pressure you apply, the more static you emit. So stop asking, when will it show up? Start asking, who am I being right now? If the answer is someone who's tense, doubting, grasping, you know why it's delayed. But if the answer is someone who's living the feeling now, then the timeline is already collapsing into your experience. Dropping the need doesn't mean giving up. It means becoming. You stop identifying as the version who needs the result to feel okay. You step into the version who is okay. And because of that, the result can now align. This is the frequency of arrival, of inevitability, of calm power. And the field loves that frequency because it's clean, it's open, it's stabilized. So if something's not shifting, check for hidden need. Are you holding the energy of waiting? Are you measuring time? Are you looking for signs to soothe your doubt? If so, reset. Drop back into presence. Feel the version of you who doesn't need anything to feel enough. And broadcast from there. That one move, releasing the emotional grip, will accelerate your shift more than any affirmation, vision board, or routine. Because the field responds to coherence. And coherence happens when you are not split between wanting and doubting, between hoping and fearing. You're simply being. And in that state, things move fast. So the next time you catch yourself needing, ask, what's the signal I'm really sending? Then pause, feel, release, and return to the frequency of already. Not because you don't care, but because you know who you are. And who you are is whole, aligned, and already tuned to the timeline where everything has already arrived. Gratitude is not a mindset technique. It's not a self-help habit. It's not a feel-good ritual. It's a frequency, and it's one of the most direct access points to quantum shift. You've been told to practice gratitude. Write it down. Say thank you. Count your blessings. And yes, all of that has value. But most people are practicing gratitude from their mind, not broadcasting it from their field. True gratitude isn't a list. It's a state. It's not about what's going right. It's about becoming the version of you who already feels like everything's complete, even before anything changes. Because when you embody real gratitude, you enter the emotional signature of fulfillment. And that signature is a match to the timeline where what you want has already landed. Here's why this matters. Gratitude doesn't just feel good. Tunes the field. Tells the quantum mirror. This version of reality is safe. This version is stable. This version is complete. And when the field receives that signal, it expands it. So when you feel gratitude, not because of what you have, But because of who you are being, you're not just affirming your current state. You're collapsing the distance between now and your desired timeline. Let's be clear. Most people wait to feel grateful. They wait until the money arrives. They wait until the body changes. They wait until the relationship shows up. But waiting delays the shift. Why? Because waiting is rooted in lack. But when you choose to feel gratitude now, not because of what's present, but because of what's already true energetically, you collapse time. You're not thanking life for the scraps. You're thanking it for the signal you're stabilizing. And the field moves fast in response. This is the shortcut. Because gratitude is the emotional signature of already. It's the opposite of need. It's the end of chasing. It's the emotional lock that tells the field, I've arrived. And once that lock is active, reality catches up. Let's take it deeper. Gratitude isn't passive. It's not just a warm feeling. It's a frequency override. If your body is holding fear, and you anchor into gratitude, the fear begins to dissolve. If your mind is racing, and you enter real gratitude, the noise drops out. If you've been stuck in a loop of doubt, resentment, impatience, and you choose to access gratitude without external proof, the loop breaks. Because gratitude is coherence. And coherence organizes the field, creates order where there was fragmentation. It brings alignment to scattered energy. It stabilizes the frequency of the version of you who no longer needs anything to be different in order to feel powerful. That's why gratitude isn't about settling. It's about commanding, not from force but from alignment. Gratitude is how you tell the field, I recognize the signal I'm sending, and I choose to lock it into expansion now. Not when the results show up. Not when circumstances shift. Now, because gratitude isn't reacting to what is. It's broadcasting what's real. And what's real is the version of you who knows that the field is already organizing your life around your most stable frequency. So you don't wait to feel grateful. You use gratitude as a tool, as an energetic switch. You can feel it at will. You can access it on command. You can enter it before the evidence, and that's when it changes everything. Here's the mistake many make. They try to force gratitude. They say the words. They list things out, but they're doing it to get a result. And if that's the motive, the frequency is still need. Real gratitude has no agenda. It doesn't say, I'm doing this so I get more. It says, this version of me is already rich, already whole, already met, and I feel it now. Even if nothing outside has shifted. Because when your body holds that frequency, not your head, your body, the quantum field updates its blueprint. And the version of your life that matches that coherence begins forming. Quickly, you'll notice small signs first. A moment of ease, an unexpected message, a shift in someone's tone, an internal lightness. But those are not random. They're data points, proof that the field is moving. Proof that the signal has changed. And it all started because you used gratitude the right way, not as a ritual but as a portal. So how do you do it? Simple. You pause. You breathe. You close the gap. You feel what the version of you would feel if it were already done. Not a fantasy. Not a hope. A signal. You feel the gratitude of the one who's already there. And you let that emotion fill your chest, your nervous system, your frequency. Even if just for 30 seconds, you hold that state. And when you do, you've shifted timelines. Not because you got lucky. Not because you said the right words. Because your frequency matched your future. Gratitude made it real. So stop thinking of it as something you should do. Use it as the powerful field tool it is. Not later. Not after the change. Now. Because the moment you hold gratitude like it's already here, it starts being here. You've been taught to treat resistance like an obstacle, something to fight, something that means you're doing something wrong. But what if resistance isn't blocking your path? What if it is the path? Resistance isn't a wall. It's a signal. It's not saying stop. It's saying look here. Every time resistance shows up, it's revealing a frequency mismatch. It's exposing the exact place your energy is still coded to the old timeline. This isn't punishment. It's precision. The field never hides your edge. It brings it to the surface loud, clear, and undeniable. and that edge always feels like resistance. You feel it in your body as tension, in your mind as doubt, in your choices as hesitation. But none of that means you're stuck. It means the shift is happening, and this is the friction point that needs alignment. Because every breakthrough requires one thing: a release of the version of you that can't go where you're going. And that release often feels like resistance. Let's make this real. You try to step into abundance, and fear shows up. You want to speak your truth, and shame kicks in. You start aligning to a new identity, and guilt about leaving the old one hits hard. That's not failure. That's the field surfacing all frequencies that no longer match the next version of you. Not to stop you, to give you a chance to clean the code. Resistance is not the enemy. It's a map. It shows you exactly where the work is. Not the outer work, the inner recalibration. When you feel resistance, the question is not, how do I get rid of this? The real question is, what belief is this sensation exposing? Because resistance always wraps around an identity, an old script, an unconscious assumption you didn't know you were still carrying. And the field, always wanting coherence, brings it forward so you can reselect. But if you avoid it, deny it, or suppress it, it stays. And the field keeps mirroring it. So instead of shrinking from resistance, face it. Not to suffer, but to free yourself. Every time you move through resistance with presence, you untangle a thread that's been anchoring you to a past timeline. You free your signal. You open your access. You stabilize a higher frequency. Let's get specific. If you feel resistance when you speak your desire, stop. Ask, what's the story underneath this tension? Where did I decide this wasn't safe to have? Whose voice am I still carrying that contradicts my expansion? And don't analyze forever. Feel, breathe, listen. Because resistance is not just a thought. It's a stored charge, a held memory, coded belief, a pattern that once kept you safe but now keeps you small. And as you feel it fully, without judgment, it begins to dissolve. This is not bypassing. This is processing. You don't have to relive the pain. You just have to recognize that you're not the version of you who made that contract anymore. And as that realization lands, the resistance loses its grip. The field updates your signal. The mirror starts to change. Because the version of you who lives the new timeline does not carry that resistance. So to fully shift into that version, you must confront what's still active inside you that doesn't match the new signal. This is the sacred function of resistance. It's not a block. It's a compass. It points directly to your next access point. So when you feel it, don't recoil. Don't make it mean something is wrong. Don't decide you're not ready. Recognize, this is the friction of frequency shift. This is the edge of the old timeline. This is where my power is trying to break through. And then breathe, soften, feel what's true underneath the fear. Because underneath every resistance is a truth that wants to rise. A self that wants to emerge. A frequency that's trying to stabilize. And when you meet resistance with presence, it transforms. Not with effort, with awareness. Because resistance only holds power when you identify with it. When you believe it's telling the truth. But when you see it as feedback, as code ready to be rewritten, as a doorway, not a dead end, you stop resisting the resistance. And that's when it begins to lift. Sometimes it dissolves in seconds. Sometimes it comes in waves. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it roars. But it always carries a message. And once you read that message clearly, the old version of you no longer runs the show. The frequency stabilizes. The shift holds. And the new timeline becomes dominant. Not because you fought your resistance. Because you understood it. So next time you feel blocked, stuck, tense, doubtful, pause. Don't run. Don't fix. Don't numb. Feel. Inquire. Update. Because resistance isn't there to stop you. It's there to show you where you're still choosing the old signal so you can stop. And the moment you choose differently, the field does too. There's a myth that keeps people stuck for years. The idea that you must heal every wound, solve every issue, and process every emotion before you can shift your life. That's not how the field works. You don't need to be fully healed to fully align. You don't need to resolve every trauma before you create a new reality. You don't need to endlessly process the past to access the future. Because the field doesn't operate on how much you've healed, it operates on the signal you're broadcasting right now. The truth is, healing can become a trap. Not because it's wrong, but because it's often used as a delay mechanism. People convince themselves that until they fix everything, they can't have what they want. So they stay in cycles of endless self-work, constantly finding more reasons why they're not ready. But the field isn't looking for perfection. It's looking for precision. It's reading your current broadcast, not your story, not your history, not your wounds. Your now. And now is a frequency you can shift, even while old pain still exists in your system. Because pain and possibility can coexist. Limitation and access can overlap. You can still have fragments of an old story and still align to a new signal. You don't need to fully clean the house before you can invite in expansion. You just need to change the channel. Here's what that means. Every version of you already exists. The healed you, the abundant you, the powerful you, the loved, free, creative, aligned you. They're not waiting on your trauma timeline to be complete. They're not locked behind a wall of emotional homework. They're available the moment you stop tuning to the frequency of the version of you that's constantly fixing. Fixing isn't bad, but fixing is often rooted in the idea that something is wrong with you, and the field reflects what you believe. So if your signal says, "I'm not ready, I'm still broken, I have more work to do," that's the version of reality the field constructs around you. Not to punish, to mirror. This is why changing the channel is more powerful than solving the story. You don't have to fix the signal. You replace it. You don't have to heal the pain before you align to the joy. You can choose to feel the joy anyway, and let the old pain dissolve in a new frequency. This isn't bypassing. This is quantum access. Bypassing is denying your pain exists. Quantum access is saying, "I see the pain, but I don't live from it anymore." You feel it. You honor it. But you don't build your identity around it. You shift into a version of you who feels different, even if the old sensations are still present. And from that shift, the field responds. People think healing is linear. They think it's a staircase. One wound at a time. One lesson at a time. But frequency doesn't need steps. It needs calibration. And calibration doesn't require the old frequency to disappear. It only requires the new one to stabilize. When the new signal becomes dominant, the old one loses its power. That's why sometimes people shift massively without doing the work. Not because they skipped healing, but because they stopped identifying with the version of themselves who needed to be healed. They changed the channel. Let's make this concrete. You want to create a life of abundance, but you've experienced scarcity for years. You carry the emotional memory of lack. If you wait to feel fully healed from every scarcity wound before you allow abundance, you'll be stuck for years, if not decades. But if instead you access the version of you who feels safe, resourced, and supported now, you begin to generate a new frequency, even if the old fear still lingers in the background. And the more you broadcast the new version, the less weight the old one carries. You're not fighting the fear. You're replacing the source it draws power from. That's how the channel changes. You stop tuning to the frequency of pain, not because you deny it, but because you don't feed it anymore. You stop rehearsing the narrative. You stop looping the memory. You stop using it as your point of identity. And the field? It stops reflecting it. Because now, it's responding to the signal of someone who is living from alignment, not trying to earn it. This applies to everything. You don't have to heal your relationship history to feel loved. You don't have to resolve every insecurity to feel confident. You don't have to rewire your past to trust your future. You have to shift where you're broadcasting from and let the field build from that place. Yes, some healing will happen as a result. But it happens because you shifted, not because you suffered. It happens as a side effect of choosing a new state, not as a requirement for it. This is the power of choice. You don't have to relive the old story. You don't have to analyze every emotion. You don't have to fix what you've already outgrown. You change the channel. You choose the signal. You stabilize it. And the field, ever faithful, ever exact, reflects your selection. That's not bypassing the human experience. That's reclaiming your multidimensional power. You don't deny your pain. You stop letting it script your life. You're not here to be defined by what hurt you. You're here to choose what builds you. And that choice is always available. In every breath. In every now. No matter what's still unresolved. Every moment of your life, the field is talking to you. Not in metaphors. Not in riddles. In feedback. Your reality is not a random sequence of events. It's a reflection, a feedback loop, responding directly to your dominant frequency. That means the people you meet, the opportunities that arise, the patterns that repeat, the emotions that surface. All of it is data. The question is, are you paying attention? Most people aren't. They're waiting for lightning bolts, epiphanies, dramatic signs. But the field doesn't shout. It mirrors, subtly, constantly, precisely. That awkward conversation that didn't go the way you expected? Feedback. That financial plateau that won't break no matter how hard you work? Feedback. That burst of synchronicity that felt too perfect to plan? Also feedback. The field is always reflecting your current energetic coding. And if you understand that, you stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this showing me about my signal? That one shift puts you back in power. Because feedback isn't here to criticize. It's not judgment. It's navigation. It's the field saying, here's where your frequency is aligned. Here's where it isn't. That's not punishment. That's precision. You don't need to interpret every event like a mystery. You need to observe it as data. What's showing up is what's stabilized. So if something repeats, don't label it as bad luck or karma. Label it as feedback. It's the field highlighting your most practiced vibration. This isn't about blame. It's about clarity. Blame says, this is my fault. Clarity says, this is my reflection. And with reflection, you can make adjustments. You can tune. You can recalibrate. Let's get practical. You wake up and something feels off. You're frustrated. Your day feels slow. You could call it a bad mood. Or you could see it as real-time feedback. Ask, what part of my signal is unsettled right now? What identity am I operating from in this moment? What timeline is this emotional state tuning me to? Suddenly, the experience becomes useful. Not something to fix. Something to read. Because that's what life is, a feedback-rich environment. Every moment is telling you what you're broadcasting. Every person is reflecting a piece of your field. Every trigger is pointing to a code still active in your system. Not to shame you, to guide you. When you start reading the field like that, resistance softens. You stop taking things personally. You start seeing patterns as portals, not problems. This doesn't mean you overanalyze everything. It means you become attuned. You develop an internal radar. This conversation felt expansive. Keep broadcasting that. This situation felt constricted. Something in my signal needs cleaning. And from there, you adjust. Not reactively. Deliberately. This is when feedback becomes fuel. You're not just living. You're co-creating. Because feedback isn't static. It's dynamic. It evolves with you. As soon as your signal updates, the feedback changes. That's why the field responds so quickly when you shift your state. Because the feedback loop is instant once the frequency stabilizes. So you stop needing time to prove that your change is real. You watch the reflection for proof that it's landing. This is not magical thinking. This is energetic precision. The field is an interface. Your signal is the input. Reality is the output. If you don't like the output, you don't smash the screen. You change the code. Feedback helps you know where the code needs updating. And sometimes that feedback is beautiful. The door opens. The call comes through. The alignment is effortless. That's not luck. That's reflection of coherence. So acknowledge it. Feel the calibration. Lock it in. Because positive feedback isn't random either. It's validation that your frequency is working. And when feedback feels rough, don't spiral. Don't panic. Just ask, where am I broadcasting from? What is the field matching right now? What identity is this reality confirming? Then reselect, because the field doesn't hold grudges. It doesn't punish. It simply reflects your last update. That's why awareness is power. You don't have to control the world. You just have to stay aware of the signal you're sending and what the mirror is saying back. This creates a different relationship with life. You stop forcing. You start listening. You move from reaction to refinement. And refinement is mastery. Every master of quantum alignment is a reader of the field. They don't guess. They observe. They test frequencies. They notice the results. They update in real time because they know feedback is always accurate and it's always pointing toward alignment. So when life feels chaotic, pause. Read it. When something amazing happens, pause. Read that too. Use everything as signal data, because the more fluent you become in reading the field, the faster you shift timelines. You're not in random motion. You're in constant dialogue with creation. And the more aware you are of that dialogue, the more precisely you can shape it. The field is always talking, always reflecting, always guiding. So stop asking for signs. Start reading what's already showing up. That's not just insight. That's quantum fluency. You've been told to visualize, picture what you want, see it clearly, feel it, live it in your mind. And while that guidance isn't wrong, it's often misused and misunderstood. Because most people visualize as a wish. They're using imagination to escape their current reality, not to stabilize a new frequency. And when you visualize from escape, the field doesn't hear the dream. It hears the gap. It reflects the absence, not the image. It mirrors the distance, not the vision. So the more you visualize from a place of longing, the more you amplify the very signal that delays the result. This is why so many people say, "I've been visualizing for months and nothing's happening." The issue isn't their picture, it's their signal. Visualization, when used correctly, isn't a fantasy tool. It's a frequency lock. It's how you broadcast a stable signal that aligns your body, your identity, and your field with a specific version of reality. And when you do that with coherence, the shift begins. Not because you saw it enough, because you became it internally. Let's get specific. Most people visualize like this. They sit down. They close their eyes. They imagine the car, the house, the partner, the bank balance. They try to feel good about it. And then they open their eyes, re-enter their default state, and continue living as if it's not real. That's not visualization. That's mental theater. It might feel nice. It might even offer temporary motivation. But if the emotion doesn't match the image, the field reflects the dominant emotion, not the imagined scene. The right way to visualize isn't to focus on the picture. It's to lock in the emotional signature of the version of you who's living it already. That version isn't excited by the picture. That version feels normal in that reality. They're not hyped. They're calibrated. Their nervous system has adjusted. Their field is stabilized. Their choices reflect that reality as present, not distant. And that's the key. You're not visualizing to make it happen. You're visualizing to enter the frequency of the timeline where it's already happening. This is how you use the tool with power. Let's break it down. Start with identity, not outcomes. Don't just visualize what you want. Tune into who you are in the life where that thing is normal. What does that version of you feel like when they wake up? What do they believe? What do they no longer worry about? Anchor the emotion, not the image. The image is a bridge, not the goal. The goal is to generate the frequency. Gratitude, confidence, freedom, safety. Whatever emotion matches the new timeline, that's your real focus. Remove the trying. If you're straining to visualize, stop. Forcing the image blocks the state. Let the feeling build organically, even if it's subtle. Subtle frequencies are often more stable than intense bursts. Bring the state into your now. Don't leave the visualization on the pillow. Ask, what small actions, expressions, or decisions would I make today if I were already that version of me? This turns visualization from a mental exercise into a field command. You're not using your mind to hope. You're using your imagination to recalibrate your signal. Because here's what the field responds to: consistency, embodiment, emotion, not the fantasy, not the vision board, not the intensity of your desire. It responds to the internal agreement that this version of life is now true. And visualization, done right, is how you form that agreement. It's not about quantity, it's about quality. You can spend 5 minutes locked into full alignment, and that does more than hours of inconsistent imagining. Because when the signal locks in, the field moves. It starts rearranging. You'll get an idea, a phone call, an urge to change something small. That's the timeline opening. Not because you forced it, but because you matched it. So if your visualizations haven't been working, stop asking, "Why isn't it here yet?" Start asking, "Was I broadcasting the feeling of already, or the hope of maybe?" Hope is unstable. Emotion is precise. This is why high-level manifestors don't just see the goal. They live it from within. They feel the identity. They breathe it. They act in coherence with it. And they don't leave that state just because the outside hasn't caught up. Because they know the field can't help but catch up once the signal is stable. This is the real purpose of visualization. Not to ask the field for something, but to tell the field who you are. And when your body, mind, and frequency agree on that identity, the mirror updates. You don't need to check on the manifestation. You don't need to visualize 20 times a day. You visualize to calibrate. And once calibrated, you let life reflect that change. So take this in. You're not trying to make your vision happen. You're using your vision to become someone who lives there already. And the moment that frequency becomes your default, the field responds in kind. No begging, no waiting, no pushing, just alignment. Change does not take time, it takes identity. You don't shift your life by slowly accumulating results. You shift it by embodying a different version of you, and then watching reality align. Because reality doesn't bend to effort. It bends to who you are being. And the moment you become someone new, not on paper, not in theory, but in frequency, the field has no choice but to reflect that. This is not motivation. It's mechanics. The field is reading your energetic signature in every moment. Not what you say, not what you affirm, not what you want, what you are. That's why the moment your identity changes, your reality begins catching up. Fast. Because it's not catching up to a goal. It's catching up to a signal. Let's get exact. Say you've been stuck in scarcity. You've been affirming abundance. You've been visualizing overflow. But deep down, you still identify as someone trying to escape lack. You still operate as someone who believes money is hard to get. You still act like it's risky to relax. So your field reflects that. Not because it's mean, because it's precise. Then one day something clicks. You stop seeing yourself as the struggler. You stop chasing. You stop defending your limitations. And you start to embody a version of you who feels calm, stable, resourced, normal around abundance. Not just for a few minutes, not just during meditation, but as your baseline. That's when the field begins shifting. Because your identity just updated. Not because you made more money, but because you became someone who no longer transmits scarcity. And the field follows the signal. This is true for everything. Health, love, power, creativity, freedom. It all bends to identity. Because identity is the source of your frequency. You are not manifesting from your thoughts. You are manifesting from your self-concept. Change that, and the thoughts, feelings, actions, and external results begin to reorder themselves. This is why so many people stay stuck while doing everything right. They journal, they visualize, they meditate, they take action. But deep down, they still identify with the version of themselves who's trying to become something, not the version who already is. And the field mirrors who you are, not who you hope to be. So the moment you shift identity, the entire grid around you rearranges. New conversations show up. Old blocks dissolve. Unseen paths reveal themselves. Because you've stopped holding the signal of the old version. You've exited that frequency. And you've stabilized in a new one. That's not gradual. That's instant. The outer world may take time to materialize fully, yes. But the shift began the moment you changed who you're being. This is why you must focus less on doing and more on being. Because if you keep doing all the right things while broadcasting the wrong identity, the field stays locked. But if you start being the version of you who already lives what you want, the field starts reorganizing. And being isn't pretending. It's not faking it. It's not performance. It's coherence. It's becoming internally congruent with the timeline you say you want. It's letting go of every internal signal that says, I'm not ready. I still have to prove myself. It hasn't happened yet. And choosing instead to transmit. This is who I am now. This version of me is already online. The field reflects me, and I reflect this frequency. That's when shift happens. Not slowly, not conditionally, immediately, because the moment the identity holds, the external has no choice but to update. This is why timelines collapse when people stop trying to get something and start living from already. The field doesn't wait for permission. It waits for alignment. So you don't need to ask, how much longer will it take? You need to ask, who am I being right now? If you're still being the version of you who's waiting, you're feeding the timeline of waiting. If you're still being the version of you who's almost ready, you're projecting almost into the mirror. But when you're being the version of you who is without condition, without craving, without hesitation, you're stabilizing the version of reality that matches that. That's the game. The shift isn't something that happens to you. It's something you allow by updating who you are. And the beautiful part? You can choose it at any moment. You don't need a breakthrough. You don't need permission. You don't need proof. You just need to decide that the old version has served its purpose, and that you're ready to transmit from the new one. This is not about perfection. It's about consistency. You don't need to hold the new identity 24/7. You just need to hold it long enough for it to become normal. And once it's normal, once it's no longer a stretch, the field has already shifted. Not in theory, in real, tangible ways. Because you didn't just think differently. You became someone else. And everything around you will catch up because it has to. The field doesn't create from what you want. It creates from what you are. Look around. Your job, your relationships, your finances, your health, your home. None of it is the cause of your reality. It's the effect. Every environment you live in, internal or external, is not shaping your state. It's echoing it. Your surroundings are not dictating your frequency. They're matching it. And once you understand this, everything changes. You stop trying to fix your life by rearranging the pieces. You start updating your broadcast and let the pieces reorganize themselves. Because the field doesn't respond to your conditions. It responds to your dominant state. And then it mirrors that state as the conditions you think are shaping you. Let's get clear. Your job isn't why you feel stuck. Your energy field stabilized a version of you who aligns with that job. Your relationship isn't why you feel disconnected. Your frequency drew a mirror that reflects that level of intimacy or lack. Your bank account isn't what makes you feel limited. It's the printout of a signal that was broadcasting lack long before the balance showed up. In every case, your environment is the echo, not the voice. But when you confuse the two, you give your power away. You start believing, I can't change until this changes. I can't be different until they act differently. I can't feel better until life improves. That's the trap. That's the illusion. That's the loop that keeps timelines repeating. Because every time you react to your environment as if it's the cause, you reinforce the signal that created it. And the field? It simply nods and says, understood. Keep reflecting that. This is why reality feels so solid, so hard to change, so immovable. Not because it is, but because you're still treating the mirror as the origin. But mirrors don't lead. They follow. So if you want your world to change, stop waiting for the echo to speak first. You shift. You transmit. You align. And the field, obedient and neutral, echoes it back. This is how true transformation works. It's not about forcing your environment to bend. It's about becoming someone who no longer matches the current reflection. And when that happens, the reflection can't help but change. Let's break this down. Say your home feels chaotic, cluttered, disorganized. That's not random. It's showing you the state of your internal field. Maybe your boundaries are unclear. Maybe your self-worth is scattered. Maybe your signal is overloaded with past programming. The clutter isn't the cause, it's the echo. Or say you're surrounded by people who don't see you. They overlook your ideas. They minimize your presence. That's not proof of your smallness. It's a reflection of the version of you that hasn't fully seen yourself yet. It's not rejection, it's resonance. And the moment you start owning your voice, knowing your worth, and embodying visibility without needing permission, you'll notice a shift. Suddenly, people treat you differently. New connections appear. Old dynamics dissolve. Why? Because the echo chamber updated. Your frequency changed and the field responded. This is why it's not useful to blame your environment. Yes, some environments are toxic. Yes, some are restrictive. But even those are feedback. Even those are mirrors. Not because you deserve them, but because at some level they matched your old signal. And when you update the signal, the environment either upgrades with you or fades out. That's how it works. Not with force, with frequency. This is also why you don't have to wait for better conditions to start shifting. You don't need the new job first. You don't need the ideal relationship first. You don't need the perfect home, the healed family, the supportive friends. You need one thing, a stabilized identity that no longer matches the echo you're currently seeing. From there, the field begins bending. Not because you escaped your environment, because you outgrew the frequency that created it. And that's when miracles happen. Because the shift didn't come from your surroundings, it came from your source. So here's what to remember. The field is always listening. Not to your complaints, not to your dreams, to your signal. And your environment is not there to convince you of what's real. It's there to show you what you're currently aligned with. So if you don't like what you see, don't panic. Don't shame yourself. Don't fight the mirror. Just update the signal. Become the version of you who lives the life you say you want. Emotionally, energetically, mentally. Then walk through your current world as them, not as the version still reacting to the past. The more you stabilize that state, the more the echo chamber updates to match. And before long, the job feels different. The people show up differently. The money starts flowing. The space begins supporting you. Not because the environment changed you, but because you changed the environment's instruction set. You shifted the frequency, and the mirror followed. That's not magic. That's alignment. You've been taught that transformation takes time. That change must be gradual. That big shifts come only after long periods of struggle, consistency, or healing. But the field doesn't operate on your clock. It doesn't wait for weeks or months to respond. It doesn't care how long you've wanted something. It responds to precision. And when the signal is precise, the shift is instant. Not metaphorically, literally. Because the field doesn't require time to rearrange. It requires clarity. It requires coherence. It requires exact match. Most people don't experience fast change. Not because it's impossible, but because their signal is scattered. They think one thing, feel another, act from something else entirely. And so the field stays confused, reflecting a blur of mixed messages. That's not because you're broken. It's because you're out of alignment. But alignment isn't a process. It's a decision, a moment of total internal agreement. Not hope, not effort, agreement. Your mind, your body, your frequency, all broadcasting the same message. This version of me is here now. That's the formula. And the moment you hit it, the field adjusts. That's the instant shift. It doesn't take 21 days. It doesn't need a moon cycle. It doesn't wait until Monday. It happens now or not at all. Not because change is rare, but because most people are waiting to feel ready instead of choosing to be ready. Let's break this down. You want to shift your financial timeline. You read, you learn, you visualize. But if your dominant frequency says, I still don't know how, it hasn't happened yet, I hope something changes soon, then you're not broadcasting precision. You're broadcasting uncertainty. And the field reflects that delay. Now, picture a moment where something just clicks, where you stop needing it to arrive, where you stop trying to fix it, where you feel something lock into place and say, this version is now the default. You didn't plan that moment. You didn't schedule it. It arrived because something in you aligned so clearly that resistance dropped away. And the signal stabilized. That's what causes timelines to collapse. Not hustle. Not repetition. Precision. This is why people say life changed overnight. Not because the universe suddenly approved, but because alignment was reached and everything else followed. This is what you must understand. The field is not measuring your effort. It's reading your frequency. So the question is not, how hard are you trying? It's, how precise is your signal? Are you still sending mixed energy? Still waiting for signs to believe? Still adjusting your state based on what you see instead of what you know? If so, the field will continue delivering partial reflections. But the moment you decide to lock into the full signal, the version of you who isn't waiting, doubting, or hoping, everything reorders. You shift timelines. You activate new patterns. You stop repeating the old code. Because precision ends confusion. And when the signal is clean, reality cannot help but update. Here's how to access it. Get still. Clarity never comes through mental noise. Silence your mind. Drop into the body. Feel the static settle. Locate your true desire. Not what you think you should want. What the real you is ready to embody. Something that already belongs to you in the field. Access the version of you who already has it. Don't imagine outcomes. Feel identity. Tune to the emotional baseline of the already version. Hold that state without flinching. Don't adjust it based on external evidence. Let the feeling lead the facts. If you can hold that alignment, for even a moment with full precision, you'll feel something click. That click is the shift. It might not show up immediately in your physical world, but the shift has already occurred. The new pattern is locked in. The field is updating in the background. And you'll know it because your behavior will change without effort. You won't have to force new actions. You'll simply act in harmony with the new signal, automatically. That's when you're not trying to change. You already are the change. That's how fast it happens. And it's available right now. This isn't rare. This is natural. But most people never give themselves permission to stabilize the signal long enough to let the shift lock in. They wobble. They doubt. They look around for confirmation. But the field doesn't respond to your waiting. It responds to your being. So stop waiting. Stop timing it. Stop measuring how long it's taking. Choose the new identity. Align with it fully. Stabilize it now. And then don't test it. Don't ask, is it working? Just live it. The test is the wobble. The test is a return to the old frequency. Precision means you don't need to check. You already know. And the field mirrors that knowing fast. Because now you're not asking reality to change. You've changed. And reality listens. This is the instant shift. Not someday. Now. You've been told that belief is everything. That you must believe it before you see it. That nothing changes unless your belief is fully aligned. But that's only part of the story. And it's not the part that moves timelines. Because belief isn't the core ingredient. Stability is. You don't need to believe something intellectually for it to become real. You only need to stabilize the frequency of the version of you for whom it's already true. The field doesn't scan for thoughts. It doesn't evaluate your belief system. It matches your broadcast. And belief, as we've been taught, is often too weak, too conditional, and too unstable to drive that broadcast on its own. How many times have you tried to believe something? Told yourself it's possible? Said the affirmations? Repeated the mantras? And yet nothing shifted. Not because you didn't believe hard enough, but because the belief wasn't anchored in your nervous system. It wasn't stabilized in your frequency. It was intellectual, not energetic. Here's the real mechanism. When your signal is coherent, the field doesn't care whether you consciously believe it. It just reflects what's stabilized. You could be saying, I'm not sure I believe this is working. But if your state is emotionally locked into the version of you who has the thing, the field will mirror that version. Not your doubts. Not your mental resistance. Your dominant energy. This is why some people create massive change even while their minds are full of questions. Because they acted from the future version. They felt the resonance. They held the frequency even if they didn't fully understand it. And the field always responds to that. So stop waiting to be certain. Stop delaying your shift until your thoughts catch up. You can move without full belief if you can stabilize the identity. Stability is stronger than belief, because stability isn't about agreement. It's about signal integrity. It means you're no longer wobbling. You're no longer broadcasting multiple versions. You've stopped switching stations. You're holding the line, even if your brain hasn't fully bought in yet. And when you do that, the field locks in. Let's make this real. You're stepping into a timeline where you're highly resourced, but you've never lived that way before. Your old beliefs say, that's not realistic. Money doesn't work that way. You've always had to struggle. Now, you can either try to fight those beliefs one by one, or you can stabilize the version of you who feels relaxed around money anyway. You let your body feel safety. You let your emotions transmit sufficiency. You let your actions reflect someone who trusts what's already available, even if your mind is still catching up. And the field? It reflects that signal, not the mental lag. This is not denial. This is direction. You're not ignoring your thoughts. You're overriding them with a more powerful frequency. And eventually, your mind catches up. It starts seeing proof. It starts softening its resistance. Because the field starts delivering new data. That's the loop most people get backward. They want belief first and results after. But often, the results come after you choose to stabilize the state, even without full belief. That's where real power begins. Because now, you're not waiting for your thoughts to be perfect. You're anchoring into the identity that sends the signal. You're letting the field update your belief through experience. This is how quantum change works. It's not logical. It's not linear. It's not belief-based. It's resonance-based. You emit, the field reflects, and your mind adjusts once the evidence arrives. So give yourself permission to not believe all the way. You don't need certainty. You need congruence. You need enough presence in the new identity to hold the frequency, long enough for the old patterns to dissolve. That's how timelines lock in. And here's something else. You don't even need to believe you're doing it right. You don't need to believe you're powerful. You don't need to believe you're worthy. All of those beliefs will follow the shift. The signal comes first. So stop waiting to be confident. Start acting from the version of you who already lives that confidence. Stop waiting to feel deserving. Start stabilizing the energy of someone who expects the result. Not because they fought for it, but because they've already arrived. This is what most people never do. They keep trying to believe instead of choosing to stabilize. And the field doesn't wait for your belief. It follows your being. So today, whatever you're working on, whatever shift you're calling in, ask this. Can I hold the frequency of the version of me who has already normalized this outcome? Not, do I believe this will happen? Because belief might still be wobbly, but frequency can be firm. And once the frequency holds, reality begins to confirm. Not belief-driven confirmation, field-driven reflection. And the more results you see, the easier belief becomes. The more you relax, the more you trust, the more you know. But knowing didn't come first. Stability did. You've been taught to manifest, set the vision, state the desire, visualize the outcome, hold the emotion. And for many, that works to a point. But eventually, the method starts to feel mechanical. It stops landing. The energy feels forced. And the results slow down. Why? Because the more advanced your alignment becomes, the less you need to manifest at all. The most powerful manifestation isn't effort. It's presence. It's not trying to pull a future into now. It's being the now where it's already real. In other words, advanced manifestation is no manifestation. It's not that the mechanics stop matching. It's that they're no longer needed because you've become the version of you who no longer sees the desire as separate. You're no longer trying to bring it in. You are it. And the field mirrors that instantly. Let's unpack this. Traditional manifestation assumes a gap. I'm here, and the thing I want is over there. And so we apply techniques to close the gap. But advanced manifestation recognizes there is no gap, only frequency selection. The version of you who has the thing already exists, and they're not manifesting it, they're living it. So instead of using tools to get closer to the outcome, you simply stabilize in the identity that makes it irrelevant to chase. Because when your state is already broadcasting, "This is my normal," you stop needing to ask for it. You stop waiting for it. You stop doing rituals to summon it. It just begins appearing because that's what the field does in response to stabilized frequency. This is why some of the most powerful manifestors don't talk about manifesting. They don't post affirmations. They don't do vision boards. They live in resonance. They move in certainty. They act from inner completion, not outer pursuit. And that's the real code. Completion. Not someday. Not almost. Not getting there. Completion. The internal state that says, "This is already integrated. I don't need to reach for it. I only need to live as if it's already here, because it is." At this level, your signal no longer says, "I want." It says, "I am." And when that becomes true, reality reconfigures without resistance. So ask yourself, are you still trying to manifest? Or have you moved into the identity where the need to manifest has dissolved? This shift is subtle, but everything hinges on it. Let's use an example. Someone wants deep, aligned love. They visualize. They journal. They set intentions. They practice calling it in. But underneath it, there's still effort. Still an emotional posture of waiting. Still an awareness that it hasn't arrived. Now imagine they stop all that. Not out of defeat, but out of completion. They tune into the version of themselves who already lives in that relationship. Who feels supported, seen, safe. And instead of projecting it forward, they bring that state into their now. They walk through life already sourced. Not lacking, not longing, not waiting. And very soon the mirror catches up. Not because they followed steps. Because they became the signal. This is the edge most people never cross. They stay in a cycle of trying to manifest, instead of realizing the real power comes when you drop the need to manifest entirely. That's when the field becomes most responsive. Not because you tried harder, because you stopped needing anything to be different to feel complete. And the signal of true completion is the most magnetic force in existence. Because it doesn't say, "I'm ready for more." It says, "This is my baseline. This is my floor, not my ceiling. This is my now, not my next." You stop chasing the timeline. You stabilize it. And when that happens, reality stops testing you. It starts keeping up. Because now you're not wobbling between versions. You're broadcasting one, clearly, consistently, and unconsciously. You're no longer trying to manifest the outcome. You've internalized it to the point that it's no longer outside of you. It's not a desire anymore. It's your identity. And the field responds to identity faster than it responds to intention. So here's what advanced manifestation really looks like. You don't ask. You don't try. You don't seek. You calibrate. You stabilize. You live. You embody the version of you who doesn't use energy to get the thing because they already are the thing. Their decisions reflect it. Their emotions reflect it. Their posture, words, and energy reflect it. And reality has no option but to reflect it too. This is not detachment. It's embodiment. You're not pushing the desire away. You're anchoring it in so deeply that the field no longer treats it as a future projection. It becomes the current default. No effort, no gap, no delay, just resonance. So ask yourself, what are you still trying to manifest that you could simply start living as already done? Not faking, not forcing, living, not to impress the field, to inform it. Because once you transmit done, the field does too. You've been led to believe that influence comes from words, that to change someone's mind you must explain. To shift a relationship, you must talk it out. To be seen, you must convince or perform. But that's not how reality or energy actually works, because your field speaks louder than your voice, and your frequency communicates far more than your words ever will. You are always transmitting. Whether you're silent or speaking, People feel your energy long before they understand your message. And that energy, your signal, has the power to influence, shift, and even recalibrate others without saying a single thing. This isn't spiritual philosophy. This is energetic fact. Every human has an electromagnetic field. It extends beyond the physical body, and it constantly interacts with the fields around it, consciously or not. When your field is clear, coherent, and stabilized in a higher frequency, it entrains other fields automatically. Not through force, through resonance. This is why some people walk into a room and change the atmosphere without saying a word. It's not their personality. It's not their charisma. It's their field stability. They're holding a vibration so coherent that others begin shifting simply by being near them. The science behind this is real. It's called entrainment, the tendency for weaker frequency patterns to synchronize with stronger, more stable ones. And in human energy dynamics, the most stable field always leads. Not the loudest, not the most persuasive, the most anchored. So if you want to influence someone, stop focusing on what to say. Start focusing on who you are being. Because your being is what their field responds to. Let's look at this in practice. You want to resolve tension in a relationship. You could argue. You could explain your point. You could try to get them to see your side. Or you could stabilize into the version of you who no longer feels threatened, who no longer needs validation, who broadcasts peace, clarity, and emotional sovereignty. Then, without a word, the energy between you begins to shift. Not because you changed them, but because you stopped participating in the frequency that created the tension. You stepped into a new signal, and their field, consciously or not, begins to feel it and respond. Same goes for leadership, influence, visibility, even attraction. People don't follow you because of what you say. They follow because of what they feel when they're in your presence. They feel stability, clarity, presence, power. And that feeling, not your message, is what calibrates them to your influence. This is how powerful you actually are. You can shift someone's behavior by shifting your own signal. You can transform group dynamics without fixing anyone. You can elevate a room without speaking a word. And when you do speak, your words now carry energetic weight, because they're backed by coherence, not effort. This also means you don't have to explain your evolution to others. You don't have to justify your new timeline. You don't have to debate your value. Just embody the new frequency. Stabilize it. Let your life reflect it. And those who are ready will adjust. Not because you convinced them, because they feel the resonance and rise to meet it. Others may fall away, not because you pushed them, but because they no longer match the field you're holding. That's not failure. That's energetic clarity. You're no longer manipulating outcomes. You're transmitting truth. And truth doesn't chase. It attracts. So whether you're working to inspire, lead, heal, or love, your field is the first, last, and most important influence. Want your partner to open up? Stabilize openness in your own field. Want your team to be more focused? Stabilize clarity in your own field. Want your clients to trust you? Hold integrity in your own field. Because everyone is reading your signal consciously or not. They're feeling your actual state, not the one you project. This is why surface positivity doesn't work. You can say the right words, smile at the right time, and still feel misaligned. And people pick up on it. But when your field is clean, when your state is grounded, certain, and unshakable, people sense it, and they begin to relax, align, trust, follow. Not because you persuaded them, because your coherence gave them permission to rise. So today, let go of the pressure to say the perfect thing. Let go of the need to explain your transformation. Let go of the chase. Your influence is not in your effort. It's in your frequency leadership. And the most stable signal always leads. So if you want to shift others, become the clearest, calmest, most aligned version of yourself. And let your field do the rest. You're not just creating your own reality. You're feeding the collective. Every thought, every emotion, every signal you stabilize doesn't stop at your personal field. It transmits outward into the shared fabric of consciousness. You are a node in a global system, And that system is constantly updating based on the data it receives from its contributors. Which means, your upgrade doesn't only affect you, it affects everyone. When you shift, reality shifts. Not just your own, but the collective timeline you're participating in. This is not metaphor, it's mechanics. You've heard of the 100th monkey effect. A behavior or awareness spreads rapidly through a population once a critical number holds it. Not through contact, through field resonance. The same is true with frequency. When you stabilize a higher state, a cleaner signal, it doesn't stay private. Pulses through the field. It invites coherence from others. It entrains weaker or more chaotic signals into harmony. Your personal evolution becomes collective elevation. And this is the deeper reason you're being called to rise. Not just for yourself, but because the entire system is waiting on your signal. The collective doesn't need everyone to awaken at once. It needs enough people to hold the upgrade, to stabilize the next octave, to make the new baseline feel normal. That's you. That's why you're here. You didn't come to endlessly process, fix, or doubt yourself. You came to align, to stabilize, to broadcast, because each time you do, you widen the bandwidth for what's possible. You open access to futures others can now tune into. You collapse fear-based patterns not just in you, but in the shared grid. And you do it not by preaching, not by forcing, but by being. That's the responsibility of frequency holders. Not to explain the shift, to embody it so clearly that others feel it's safe to follow. You are a stabilizer, a transmitter, a living reference point for new reality. And the collective field is listening, not to your thoughts, not to your hopes, to your stabilized vibration. So if you've been wondering why your work matters, why your healing matters, why your embodiment matters, is this because you are literally reshaping the shared field. Every time you choose calm over chaos, presence over panic, alignment over reaction, you are coding a new template into the grid, one that others can now access, simply by coming into contact with your frequency. This is how revolutions actually happen, not through mass persuasion, through critical frequency shifts that ripple through the energetic fabric of the whole. You don't need millions. You need stability. A few coherent signals can shift the direction of an entire timeline. So when you hesitate, when you feel like your evolution doesn't matter, remember this. Someone is waiting on the version of you who is already aligned. Not to save them, but to show them what's possible. You're not here to carry the world. You're here to broadcast the version of it that's already whole. That's what the field needs now. Not more opinions, not more fear, not more reaction. It needs stabilizers. People whose frequency is so coherent, so embodied, so normal, that the new pattern becomes inevitable. This is your contribution. And you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to save anyone. You just need to stabilize. Every time you tune to peace, you anchor it into the grid. Every time you move from trust, you reinforce that pathway for others. Every time you embody a higher version of you, you raise the signal strength for the whole. That's not poetic. That's structural. This is why aligned people seem to pull others into alignment. It's not charisma. It's field leadership. And it's why your role is more important than you realize. You are not just living your own movie. You are upgrading the projector. When you stop feeding fear, the system weakens it. When you stop reacting to noise, the system starts quieting it. When you start stabilizing truth, the system amplifies it. And others feel that shift, even if they can't name it. They feel safer. They feel inspired. They feel the next version of reality becoming accessible. Because of you. That's why the field is waiting. Not for the masses. For the signal holders. The ones who stop outsourcing power. The ones who start living the new timeline. The ones who transmit it so clearly that reality must catch up. You don't need to push the collective. You just need to become the pattern you want to see repeated. And once that signal is stable, it replicates. It spreads. It updates the code of the whole. So if you feel alone, if you wonder whether your alignment is doing anything, it is. You are shaping futures. You are transmitting new possibility. You are shifting not just your own life, but the grid that all life moves through. And the collective field, that wide, humming, endlessly intelligent network of consciousness, is listening to you. You're not linear. You're not limited. You're not stuck in a single version of self. You are already operating on multiple timelines, already broadcasting across dimensions, already shifting through identities every single day. But you've been trained to think you're one thing in one world with one path. That's the illusion, not reality, because your consciousness isn't a point. It's a network. You're not a fixed personality. You're a field of options. Right now, there are countless versions of you already formed, already coded, already available, and you're tuning into one of them based on your state. That means who you're being today is not who you were yesterday, and who you become tomorrow is not being built, it's being selected. Your identity is not fixed, it's chosen. And the sooner you start acting like the multidimensional being you are, the faster you'll stop repeating the same life under different disguises. You are not on a single path. You are inside a spectrum of possible versions. And every thought, emotion, and frequency you stabilize moves you toward one and away from another. That's the truth most people don't want to face. It's easier to believe, this is just how life is. It's easier to say, this is just who I am. It's easier to wait for proof that change is possible. But change is not external. It's internal selection. And that selection happens in every moment you decide how to feel, how to interpret, how to respond, how to broadcast. You've already experienced this. Have you ever shifted your energy, and suddenly the world seemed to change with you? People responded differently. New opportunities appeared. Old problems dissolved. That wasn't coincidence. That was a dimensional update. You aligned with a version of reality that was already available, and everything responded. Because you're not here to crawl through time. You're here to tune, to select the version of you who already holds the key, already embodies the freedom, already lives the life. That version exists, right now, not in your imagination, in your field. And every time you act in coherence with that version, every time you think like them, feel like them, decide like them, you activate that version more fully. The shift is not about becoming something new. It's about remembering what's already true and stabilizing it. That's multidimensionality. You are not becoming. You are selecting. And each version of you has a completely different frequency signature, a different environment, a different stream of synchronicities, a different relationship to reality itself. So when people say, but nothing's changing, what they're really saying is, I'm still tuned into the same version of myself, because life doesn't evolve ahead of your frequency. It reflects it, precisely. So here's the question. Which version of you are you broadcasting right now? The one who's figuring it out, or the one who's already there? The one who doubts and second guesses, or the one who walks with certainty, even if the details aren't visible yet? The one who's repeating cycles, or the one who's chosen a new line of code? You don't shift by solving the old version's problems. You shift by exiting that version entirely, by saying, I no longer align with that version of me. I don't care what happened yesterday. I choose now who I am. That's multidimensional consciousness in action. And it's available at all times. You've never been limited to oneself. You've only been repeating the signal of one identity long enough for it to feel real. But real doesn't mean permanent. It just means practiced. You can change which version of you you're practicing today. Not by wishing, by broadcasting. This is also why healing doesn't have to take years. Because when you stabilize in a version of yourself who has already integrated the lesson, the pain no longer needs to teach you anything. You're no longer vibrating at the level that attracts it. That's not avoidance. That's frequency maturity. You don't bypass reality. You upgrade the version of you who experiences it. And that changes everything. Because when you start living like a multidimensional being, you stop negotiating with limitation. You stop explaining your patterns. You stop arguing for your struggle. You start acting from the version of you who no longer has that struggle. And you let reality catch up. You stop asking, How do I get there? And start living from, I'm already there. And here's how that version moves. That's not faking. That's alignment. Because the field isn't checking your resume. It's checking your frequency. And once you align with a version of you who no longer tolerates the old codes dissolve. Not with effort, with irrelevance. So let this be clear. You're not here to become anything. You're here to choose, to select, to embody, to stabilize. And once you stabilize a higher version of you, reality has no choice but to match it. You're not imagining your future. You're tuning to it. You're not waiting for evolution. You're selecting a stream that already exists and choosing to live from it. That's multidimensionality. That's sovereignty. That's power. So stop saying, one day. Stop saying, eventually. Stop saying, when I get there. You are already that version. Or you're not. And that choice is yours, always. You live in a simulation, not a metaphor, not science fiction. A real-time, data-driven, feedback-based simulation that updates based on your signal. But here's the key. You are not simulated. You are the source of the signal, the operator, the command line. The simulation responds to you, not the other way around. This is the single most liberating and terrifying truth you'll encounter. Because once you see reality for what it is, a programmable feedback environment, you can no longer pretend to be a victim of your surroundings. You are the coder. You are the architect. And the code responds instantly to your input. What kind of input? Not thoughts alone. Not emotions alone. Frequency alignment. The field doesn't read your language. It reads your resonance. It doesn't respond to your preferences. It responds to your consistency. And the environment you're walking through right now, your life, your world, your reality, is not fixed. It's a projection, built in real time, rendering itself based on your current identity pattern. Everything you see, everyone you interact with, the sequence of events around you, all of it is adjusting to match your energetic broadcast. This is not theory. It's quantum structure. Think of it like a game engine. When a player moves, the world re-renders based on their location, input, and choices. The world is not static. It is responsive. Same here. The you moving through reality is not a body alone. It's a signal, a multidimensional frequency that tells the system what to render next. And most people are walking through the simulation reacting to it, instead of realizing they are programming it with every moment of their existence. They see obstacles and assume, this is real, and I must overcome it. But the obstacle only appeared because their frequency coded for it. Not as punishment, as feedback. The simulation is not against you. It is built to mirror you with total precision. So if you want to change it, you don't fight the projection. You change the input. You stabilize a new identity. You broadcast a new emotional baseline. You make new choices even if nothing outside has changed yet. And the system updates accordingly. That's the beauty of the simulation. It has no memory. It has no grudge. It doesn't judge your past. It only mirrors your now. So every time you change your signal, the reality loop you're in begins to recode. The characters change. The rules shift. The timing realigns. That's why certain things used to feel hard, and now they're effortless. Why some people fade from your life, while new ones enter seemingly out of nowhere. Why synchronicities start stacking the moment you get clear. Because the simulation doesn't need time to change, it needs new data. And your frequency is the data. Here's where it gets powerful. You don't need to know how the system works behind the curtain. You don't need to understand the quantum mechanics. You just need to command it through clarity. Every moment of self-pity programs another loop. Every moment of identity stabilization unlocks a new corridor. You're not lost. You're programming direction. You're not stuck. You're feeding a signal the system keeps replicating. And the moment you shift from, why is this happening? To what am I broadcasting? The simulation becomes yours again. You stop reacting to the rendering. You start authoring the code. But here's what matters most. You are not simulated. You are the source interface. The system depends on you to run. That's why no one can override your signal without your permission. That's why external conditions don't determine your experience. Your response does. That's why the most powerful changes always feel like remembering, not achieving. You are not inside a trap. You are inside a responsive intelligence system designed to reflect your current identity and show you what you're feeding it. That's why every glitch you notice is not proof of chaos. It's a message, a checkpoint, an opportunity to interrupt the loop and select a different pathway. That's how multidimensional beings navigate the simulation. They don't fight shadows. They update code. They don't argue with outcomes. They recalibrate signal. And the simulation bends because it must. So let's ground this. The job you think you hate is a field mirror. Change your state, and either the job transforms or the exit appears. The relationship that feels stuck, that's a frequency entanglement. Update your signal and the dynamic reorganizes or dissolves. The problem you keep solving is a feedback loop. Stop reacting to it and it stops repeating. You don't fix the simulation from inside the storyline. You fix it by stepping outside of it and altering your broadcast. That's the only real work. Everything else, affirmations, journaling, rituals, is only effective if it stabilizes a new frequency. Because the system doesn't respond to your effort. It responds to your energy identity. And the moment you become the version of you who lives a different script, the scene changes. You didn't hack the system. You remembered it was yours. So as you move forward, stop asking if reality is real. Start asking, what part of me is it mirroring right now? Because once you start acting like the coder, the simulation becomes malleable, elegant, empowering, and what used to feel like fate starts feeling like feedback. You're not a character in someone else's game. You're the code, the command line, and the consciousness that brings it all to life. Act like it. There's a place inside you where everything goes quiet. No fear, no craving, no resistance, just stillness. Most people avoid it because it feels like nothing. No emotion to hold on to, no identity to defend, no story to repeat. They call it emptiness, a void, a pause. But it's not emptiness. It's 0 point. And 0 point is not where everything ends. It's where everything begins. Because inside that stillness is the raw field of all potential. The pure creative power that forms every version of reality. This isn't silence as absence. This is silence as source. It's the frequency beneath all others. The one that allows all timelines to arise. The one that doesn't react, it selects. And when you touch this place, even briefly, you are no longer manifesting from effort. You're not shaping life from emotion. You're not chasing timelines. You are holding the pure charge from which everything can emerge. Fully available, completely neutral, instantly powerful. This is not theory. This is practice. 0 point is real. And you've felt it. It's the moment before the big decision, when everything is suddenly quiet. It's the pause between thought and action, when you're aware but unattached. It's the space where you no longer want, need, or avoid, you just are. That's where creation happens. Not through control, but through alignment with source frequency itself. Let's get clear. You can't access 0 point by forcing calm. You reach it by letting go of distortion. You drop the identity that's performing. You stop feeding the loop that says you're behind. You surrender the version of you that needs the world to shift first. And then you're there, still, present, unattached, and yet fully alert. Not passive, potent, because this isn't about giving up. It's about giving over to the field that's already ready to generate the next version of your life. You don't direct the field from 0 point. You inform it by choosing frequency, not from reaction, from resonance. This is the only place you can select a clean timeline, one untainted by fear, history, or compensation. From 0 point, you don't create based on pain. You create based on possibility. And the moment you do, the shift begins. The field receives the instruction. The rendering starts adjusting. Why? Because the 0 point signal is the most precise frequency there is. It's not distorted by ego. It's not warped by memory. It doesn't carry contradiction. It simply says, this, now. and the universe responds. No delay, no confusion, just resonance in its purest form. This is why some of the fastest transformations happen when people stop trying. Not because they gave up, but because they hit zero. They dropped the struggle. They let the story fall away. They stopped being the one who needed to fix anything. And suddenly, a new idea came in. A breakthrough landed. A synchronicity opened the door. Because the field could finally hear something other than noise, could receive a stable signal, and act accordingly. So how do you access 0 point consciously? You get still not by resisting motion, but by releasing internal noise. You stop asking what's wrong. You stop managing outcomes. You stop trying to align, and simply become still enough to notice the part of you that's already aligned. It's always there, beneath the loops, beneath the layers, beneath the broadcast of fear and want. There is a version of you that is whole right now. Not because it's figured everything out, but because it doesn't need to. Centered, neutral, peace. That version is your 0 point, your portal, your command line. From there, everything becomes optional because nothing is urgent. You can finally select a reality without need, resistance, or compensation. Not, I want this because I'm lacking, but this is aligned with my cleanest signal. Not, I'll feel better once this happens, but I'm already stable, and this reflects my next level. This is not emotional bypassing. This is energetic precision. 0 point isn't a place to hide. It's where you remember what power feels like when it's not trying to prove anything. And when you choose from there, it sticks. Because the signal is no longer reactive. It's foundational. That's why people who live from 0 point often seem untouchable. They don't overreact. They don't spiral. They don't explain. They move from clarity. And clarity is magnetic. They're not trying to manifest. They are simply informing the field with stability. And life organizes around them. That can be you. Not someday. Now. Because 0 point is not a destination. It's your natural state, once distortion is cleared. It doesn't require perfection. Just presence. It doesn't demand belief. Just stability. And the more you access it, the easier it becomes to move through the world without being moved by it. So stop searching for the next method, the next fix, the next permission slip. Everything you want is available from the stillness inside you. Because that stillness is not emptiness. It is the source code, the architecture, the frequency blueprint of every possible future. 0 point is not absence. It's the birthplace of form. And when you stand in it, as the calm center of the storm, you don't have to force anything to change. You simply watch as everything around you begins to reorganize. Around the only thing that's ever had real power, your stabilized presence. Every moment, every breath, every thought that flickers, every emotion that lingers, every choice you make, the field hears it. It doesn't turn off. It doesn't pause. It doesn't wait for you to get it right. The field is listening, always, not to your words, to your state, not to your hopes, to your frequency, not to what you say you want, but to what you're actually being. This is the truth most people overlook. They think the universe responds to what's spoken, but it's far more precise than that. It responds to what you've stabilized, what you've accepted as real, what you continue to broadcast consciously or not. So if you're wondering why something hasn't shifted, don't ask what you've been saying. Ask what you've been showing. Energetically, emotionally, repeatedly, because the field doesn't miss. It doesn't guess. It doesn't forget. It reflects. Perfectly. That's not punishment. That's programming. You are in a feedback loop of your own design. And every input, no matter how subtle, gets mirrored back. This is the law, not of attraction, of resonance. And resonance is ruthless in its accuracy. You may say, I want freedom. But if your field is soaked in anxiety, the field won't deliver freedom. It will deliver more experiences that match anxiety. You may say, I want love. But if your emotional baseline is scarcity, you won't attract love. You'll attract evidence that love is unsafe or unavailable. Not because you don't deserve it. Not because the field is broken. But because it's listening. And giving you exactly what your signal says is true. This is confronting. It forces you to take radical responsibility for what you've been emitting, not just saying. But it's also the most liberating truth in existence. Because once you see that the field is always listening, you stop performing, you stop begging, you stop asking for permission, you start choosing, you start calibrating, you start sending a signal that says, this is who I am now, this is what I stabilize, this is what I allow, and the field ever loyal updates to match. This is why alignment matters more than effort, why frequency overrides force, why your life mirrors what you settle into, not what you wish for. Because the field is always updating your reality based on now. Not what you did last year. Not what you'll say tomorrow. Right now. This moment. This breath. This vibration. So the question is no longer, why isn't it working? The question is, what am I broadcasting without realizing it? What assumptions have become default? What expectations are looping? What emotional tones have become normalized? Because those not your affirmations, not your plans, not your vision boards are what the field is picking up. You can't trick it. You can't fake it. You can't bypass it with technique. But you can train it by stabilizing truth, by returning to coherence, by becoming someone who no longer matches the previous version of reality. Not by willpower, by frequency fidelity. When your signal becomes stable, the field becomes inevitable. Because now you're not testing it. You're informing it. You're not asking it to change. You're showing it who you are. And it listens. Immediately. Always. Even in the chaos. Even in the silence. Even in the moments where nothing seems to be happening, especially then. Because the field never sleeps. It never stops tuning itself to your output. So when people say, the universe doesn't hear me, what they really mean is, I haven't stabilized my message yet. Because once you do, the reflection becomes undeniable. You'll see timelines collapse. You'll feel resistance lift. You'll witness new opportunities that couldn't have existed in the old frequency. Not because the field got kinder, but because you got clearer. This is the final transmission. Your life is not a result of your efforts. It is a mirror of your energetic default. Change that, and the field will update in ways that feel miraculous. But it won't be a miracle. It will be precision. This is the truth at the core of all manifestation, all transformation, all real-world magic. The field is listening, always, to your stability, to your signal, to your self-selected state. So stop waiting. Stop hoping. Stop treating reality like it's outside of you. It's not. It's inside your broadcast, inside your choices, inside the part of you that decides. This is my new default. I no longer fluctuate. I no longer collapse. I no longer align with old loops. When that declaration is felt, not just said, the field responds. Not eventually, now, because it was never waiting. It was echoing. Always has been. Always will be.